Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brabert. Alongside me is Logan Camden. And you guys may have noticed, actually I'm sure you all noticed, I'm sure you were devastated by the fact that we didn't do our usual Monday pod yesterday. Logan, I hope you missed me dearly, terribly so. Please say yes.
I have been yearning to see that beautiful face of yours.
Yearning. I mean, it's a lot to say on camera in front of an audience, but it's nothing that we haven't done before, and I do appreciate it. And
it's a great verb.
Yeah, it is. No, it's very classic romantic language, and that's what we're all about here at Nerd Sash. Speaking of romantic, how about that basketball game that we saw last night, Logan? Now, we didn't do our show yesterday because I was still enjoying the tennis down in Indian Wells, having a high old time down there in tennis paradise, as they call it. It lived up to the name. But we experienced basketball paradise when the Nuggets and Thunder faced off in what was probably the game of the year so far. Like, you really can't get a better regular season game than that. So we are going to discuss that game today. We're also going to update our official top 10 contender rankings for the first time in a couple months. If you're fiending for NFL offseason takes, don't worry. That's coming tomorrow, but the NBA is too good right now, so we have to cover all of this. And we're going to start with that Nuggets-Thunder matchup, Logan. This game felt so big for so many reasons. We've been hyping this up as the two top dogs in the Western Conference all year. It felt like MVP, best in the world, like all of these top two players sort of clashes going on at once between these two heavyweight teams, and it's Shai and the Thunder who come out on top without, by the way, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams, or Isaiah Hartenstein, which has been a theme for the Thunder of this year. Excellence in spite of absences. But I want to start by just talking about what Shai did in this game, Logan. 35 points, 15 assists, and I still don't think that really comes close to capturing how incredible of a game this was from him. What kind of statement did Shai make to you with this performance?
I mean, I think he secured the MVP award. You talk about a game of this magnitude. I do think it was game of the year. Shai puts up 35 points, 15 assists, and 0 turnovers, something only him and LeBron have done in a single game. Also in this game, he ties Wilt Chamberlain's record for 126 consecutive games of scoring 20 or more points. That's a regular season streak. For real, man. I mean, that's some really good company to be in, and you talk about it, but the final two possessions, Shai just feels like he has mastered offensive basketball, man. The step back three on Christian Braun leading up to the game winner, you knew that he was searching and hunting for his own bucket. The Nuggets had been sending a lot of double teams at Shai throughout the game, even in the fourth quarter, the possession prior to his shot on Braun. They send a double, and it leads to a wide-open Isaiah Joe three-pointer. You mentioned it, like something like that's not going to pop up in the box score, but he generated that wide-open look that he missed. But Shai knew, if they don't send the double team at me, I am going to take the look, whatever he gives to me, and drains a step-back three in the mouth of Christian Braun. You thought that was the dagger. Jokic answers. They tie the game up. He does the exact same thing on the right wing to Spencer Jones stepping back for a three. And it's like, that's the one shortcoming that we've talked about Shai having in his game. If he adds that tool to his bag, he's effectively unstoppable, it feels, offensively. Like, I really do feel like Shai has just mastered the game. He's averaging 31.6 points per game this year, Carson, on 66.7% true shooting. It's the second highest true shooting percentage, the second most efficient 30-point-per-game season in NBA history, only to 2016 Steph Curry. It's truly remarkable. And I'm so impressed with SGA's continued playmaking development. He just feels like he is fully in control every single possession down the floor, man. The defense is just eating out of the palm of his hands. Like, I just feel like SGA is the puppet master, man. He is completely in control every single possession down the floor, and that's what it felt like during this game. I felt it going into the final possession. One, I thought that was the dagger on Braun. And then even when the Nuggets evened it up, I was like, SGA's got 8 seconds. I'm not worried. You know, I know what he's about to do. He's about to go carve somebody up and find his bucket, and that's exactly what he did, man. It's just what you have come to expect out of one of the masters in the game today, man. And I'm sitting here wondering, after a game like this, I wonder this often after any great Shai game, did I rank him too low in my top 10 offensive player peaks? Like, the guy just keeps getting better and better, and he's already been at an all-time level for a few seasons now, man. The guy is, I think he's the best player on the planet right now.
You hit the nail on the head when you said he just keeps getting better and better. That's what is so remarkable about this guy who has been at such a high level in this year and last year, but has just asserted himself so clearly as one of the absolute greatest players to ever play this game. And again, this year is even different from last season. I think Shai just played the best game anybody has this season. It feels that way to me. I think Jokic had an incredible game against the Timberwolves on Christmas Day where the box score was bigger, but I don't think the box score ever really does Shai justice. In a game like this, when he is so relentlessly efficient as a scorer at such volume that he forces the defense to take on such ridiculously aggressive coverages where there is a handful of hockey assists that don't show up on his stat sheet. And I'm not talking about hockey assist of like, oh, he made a swing pass to a guy who made another swing pass. I'm talking about they are blitzing Shai. They are trapping Shai. They are running multiple bodies at him, and he's just immediately creating a 4-on-3 for his team, and he gets the ball out, and there's a little lay down pass, or there's some sort of easy connective read for a teammate to make where it is the defensive attention Shai draws that immediately leads to that bucket. He created 74 total points of offense in this game. That's another thing with Shai. Like, his assists are often disproportionately valuable because he creates so many open threes for his teammates, but he creates 74 points of offense with 7 missed shots and 0 turnovers. It's unfathomable offensive efficiency from this guy. You mentioned the stat line that he shares with LeBron. If you add 75% true shooting to that criteria, so 35 points, 15 assists, no turnovers, and that sort of scoring efficiency, he's the only player to ever do that. I saw another great stat from All City NBA. The Thunder averaged 1.7 points per direct Shai touch in this game. The only other 2 players to have such a game with a certain minimum of touches in the era they've been tracking that are Tyrese Halliburton and James Harden. Like, it's one of the greatest regular season offensive games and overall games in recent memory. And specifically, it was the perfect Shai game where he puts you in this complete bind. You cannot possibly leave him in single coverage. Props to Christian Brown. Dude was absolutely helpless in this matchup because the driving ability of Shai is so absurd, and then the shot making over the top. I mean, the mid-range work is just so ridiculous in this game. So as Denver has had to resort to every single time that these teams play, they have to get funky. They have to get super aggressive with their scheme. They have to load up like crazy on Shai. They have to run doubles at him repeatedly just to force the ball out of his hands by any means necessary. And whenever they did that, he was just making plays for teammates all day, creating such efficient offense for the team without ever making mistakes. He didn't force shots. He didn't miss shots. He didn't turn the ball over a single time while he directly created 74 points of offense. And then you have the clutch sequence, the step back 3. Shai has iced 3 straight games with that shot. He did it to the Knicks. He did it to the Warriors. He did it twice in this game, essentially. Like you said, that's the one thing in the playoff run last year that left him. It was the one layer that he had added to his game last regular season even, and then it just wasn't at that level throughout the playoffs, and it was a testament to how incredible Shai is that he was still able to have such an effective playoff run. But that was kind of the one question about his scoring game is, okay, is that something that he can consistently rely on in big spots, because it's such an important tool, especially when he's facing defensive coverages like this and the coverages he's going to see overall in the playoffs when everybody is going to pack paints, everybody is going to send aggressive gap help, teams are going to zone up, teams are going to throw multiple bodies at him over and over again, right? This is the shot that he can get to regardless of if defenses load up that can be so valuable, especially when he does get in that mode of if his teammates are struggling or if he's just like, I want to be the one deciding this moment of the game with the ball in my hands. The step back 3 is the weapon to rely on there. This season, he's hitting over 44% of his step back 3s. So when you talk about a player who has solved scoring, that is 2026 Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It is a Mount Rushmore scoring season. It is arguably the greatest scoring regular season in NBA history. I talk about this a lot, but you just have to think about the combination of all-time driving, where he gets the free throw line 10 times a game, makes 90% of those. He finishes over 70% of his shots in the restricted area. He makes 56% of his shots in the paint outside the restricted area, almost 54% of his mid-range shots, and now 44% of his step-back threes on every level. This guy has absolutely elite scoring options that he can get to relentlessly, and this shot was as big as a regular season moment can get. I've seen some people comparing it to the Steph shot against OKC in 2016. I don't know if it was quite that big, just because that shot was so absurd and that was unanimous MVP Steph. Like, that was so ridiculously magical, but it's one of the biggest shots in regular season history. Like, I don't think that's outlandish to say, because when you consider the game that it capped off, when you consider the opponent that it's against, and when you consider that it's the second time, I mean, that is something special, dude, to feel like I have put this game on ice, then somehow the Nuggets generate 4 points on one possession, and then you go out there and you do it again. It's just such a statement moment for Shai to say, I'm MVP. That's over. I think that was already over, but that case is totally closed. And to say, I'm the best in the world. Like, that's how this game felt. I think it is completely absurd that anybody is still saying at this point that Jokic is clearly the best in the world. If you think Jokic is the best in the world, that is a completely reasonable opinion to hold. Let me be clear about that. But the notion that it's like Jokic and then it's everybody else, that's just not true whatsoever. Like, Shai has leveled up repeatedly to the point where he is going to deservedly win back-to-back MVPs. Like, two of the stronger MVP campaigns in NBA history. He won the best two-man MVP race ever last year, I called it, and he's been even better this year, like noticeably so. And he and Jokic have played head-to-head 14 times in the last 2 years. I mean, we've got a huge sample size of them going head-to-head. Shai has clearly been the better player more often than not. Like, if we're just going to divvy these up game by game, I went through, I would say that Shai has clearly been the better player 8 times. Jokic has clearly been the better player 4 times. And then twice they pretty much played exactly to a draw. But if you look at the overall numbers, Shai versus Denver averages 31, 6, and 8 on 63% true shooting with 2.4 turnovers a game. OKC is plus 113 with him on the court. They're minus 6 with him off the court. And then you look at Jokic's numbers, 26, 14, and 9, 59% true shooting with 4 turnovers a game. Nuggets are minus 36 with him on, minus 71 with him off. And again, even though I think if you go back and you think about those games and you look at the numbers, like, Shai has been better more often than not. OKC is 9-5 in those games, and absolutely a component in that is Shai outplaying Jokic for the most part. I still don't think the box score does Shai justice like it does a Jokic. The box score doesn't do Shai justice like a Luka Doncic, right? Because it just doesn't account. I'm talking about if you're looking at basic counting stats, as people way too often do, for the extreme efficiency that you get with Shai, from the ridiculous coverages that he forces defenses into, from the fact that he never turns the ball over and rarely misses shots and can create offense at such massive volume because of how easy it is to build a dominant team around Shai, because of how much he can dictate elite team offense with the ball in his hands, because of how little support he needs around him, and how easily he can slot into an elite historic team defense as a positive contributor on that side of the ball. You're not trying to rack up points, rebounds, and assists. You're measured by how you impact the game, how easy it is to build a great team around you. And I honestly think that I would want Shai as my starting point there. Put a gun to my head, and I'm going to ask you, please stop doing it, Logan. Please stop putting guns to my head. I would take Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as the best player in the world right now. We have been saying all year that it is neck and neck. I've been saying, based purely on this season, I could not pick between the two, but my philosophy has been, hey, tie goes to the runner. Jokic has been at this level for longer, and so I still give him the nod as best player in the world. Now we're at a point where Shai is repeatedly outplaying Jokic for the most part. All 3 times that they've met this season, Shai has clearly been the better player, and he just keeps leading to all-time great results, regardless of key guys being down. J-Dub, Chet, no matter what, if Shai is on the floor, the Thunder win like 90% of their basketball games damn near. At this point, I feel like the burden has flipped. And now it's on Jokic to prove that that title is his, because I'm seeing it from Shai every single night in all of these big matchups at a level that says to me, that's the best player in the world. The margin is the margin is thin as can be, but I would give the nod to Shai right now. And it does come down to that point of the ease of building an all-time great team around the guy. Like, you have to appreciate that OKC dominates no matter what when Shai is on the floor. He is 45-8 without Chet since last season. He is 37-4 without J-Dub since last season. When he's on the court without Chet, OKC is a plus 17 net team. When he's on the court without J-Dub, OKC is a plus 20 net team, and that's not even a real number. That's not even a possible number over a 2-season sample size without your best teammate. That is what Shai does for you with just the levels of volume and hyper efficiency he's at as a scorer right now. It's scoring Mount Rushmore stuff. As I said, it's up there for the greatest scoring regular season that we've ever seen. That level of offense, that level of scoring from Shai, the ridiculously compromised positions that puts defenses in, plus an elite defense, is the best formula in the NBA right now. And I think it's easier to build a dominant team around Shai than it is Jokic, because he needs so little offensive help and can lead you to such elite heights on that side of the ball, while he fits in so easily as a plus defender. Like, when you are getting to these heights where since last season, Shai has a 106-24 record, and the Thunder have damn near a plus 17 net rating when he's on the court. Like, I don't know if people fully grasp what it requires to propel that level of excellence on a team level, especially to do it without star teammates often. But it's Jordan-esque in terms of how flawless Shai's game is. That hyper efficiency at massive volume as a scorer, plus the two-way impact. Like, you can't get to this level of team dominance without that, because you have to be a completely dominant team on both sides of the ball to be this great. That requires a positive two-way player like Shai. That requires somebody who, again, damn near never misses and never turns the ball over like Shai, while he can still create offense at such massive volume and can dictate offense for the entire game with the ball in his hands. Like, outside of Jordan, nobody else in NBA history has been a better candidate to do that, to slot in as this massive volume scorer, plus defender, plus playmaker, crazy efficiency, and you can have a great offense because of him, and he can be a positive part of a great defense. And I don't think it's a coincidence that these two guys have led the two best 2-year runs of regular season team success by net rating in NBA history. Like, that's what Shai has done over these last 2 years. It's completely and utterly absurd. And if you don't get what you're watching by now, I genuinely don't know what to say to you, man. Like, we have been on our soapbox for years. 2024, I was adamant that Shai was a top 4 player, and people disagreed with that adamantly. 2025, last year, I was saying Shai is still underrated. Shai is absolutely a top 2 player in the world. And then early this year, I was saying best player in the world is a real conversation. Logan, you said Shai is the best player in the world a month ago, whatever. Like, you had already made this claim, and now he's on another level from even last season. So, gun to my head, that's the best player in the world. Not just that, one of the most fun players to watch in NBA history, in my opinion, the most aesthetically pleasing scorer ever. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, man. Like, there's nothing left to say. There's nothing left to prove. He just repeatedly delivers with a level of consistency that is in that top tier of the all-time greats.
He does, and I want to hone in on the specific skill development that we're talking about with Shai. I mean, that shot is so difficult. One, just the coordination. Step backs, in my opinion, are the toughest, just because you have to keep your balance on those jump shots, but specifically that Shai's going to them in late game situations. To take that burden on your shoulders, having the ball in your hands every single possession that you're on the floor, leading out the offense, consistently making decisions and not making mistakes, that level of burden game to game, and then late in games to still have your legs under you to ice games like this is so impressive. Like, the shot in of itself, to add that to your bag, is so hard because it's not an easy shot to make. But to do that in clutch time, in consecutive games now, 3 straight to be exact, it's so impressive. And the playmaking leap to me is even more impressive, just because I feel like Shai has mastered court mapping now, where you'll see him drive into these crowded paints with 3 or 4 guys, and he will jump with his eyes to the basket but he knows exactly where all of his teammates are, so he can just adjust midair and kick out. And like you mentioned, he's creating 100th percentile looks for his teammates, completely wide open jump shots. Guys aren't within 10 feet of his teammates, because that is the level of defensive attention that you have to divert to SGA or you're fucked. That's what's also crazy to me. You can get on Denver for employing that defensive strategy. I think that's the best strat. I don't know what you do with the guy. I thought it was a mistake that on those final 2 possessions with Brown on an island and with Spencer Jones on an island, they didn't send help. Fuck all those other guys. I don't want the ball in SGA's hands either of those final 2 possessions. If Isaiah Joe, who is a great shooter, he has immaculate touch, not just beyond the arc, he's great on floater range stuff. I don't want the ball in SGA's hands. And that is the conclusion that I have been left with throughout this season defensively is I think that's the best strat. And you're creating a baked-in advantage for the offense. You are giving them the numbers advantage, but I would rather his teammates have the number advantage and take the open look than have the ball in SGA's hands. That's just where I'm at with the guy. I would rather be anywhere else if I'm a defender than on SGA Island. I think that is the worst spot you can be in if you're a defense. And I think that's the ultimate testament that you can give to 100%. An offensive player. When that is the only defensive coverage that you're left with, and you saw Denver man-ups, double teams, all kinds of different zones. None of it worked. And I thought it was a mistake. Anytime you are leaving him in isolation one-on-one versus any guy, I think that's advantage SGA. And so I just don't know what you do with the guy, man. When that is the best defensive coverage that you can throw at a guy, I just kind of throw my hands up and you pray. You pray that he's going to miss.
You're completely right. Like, it is a testament to all-time great scoring value when teams start getting to the point of like, okay, you cross half court, we're trapping you, right? This is what we saw from peak James Harden, for example. Shai is at that level just in terms of the constant scoring threat, but then in terms of his scoring variety, in terms of the translatability into the clutch, like he's on another level from a guy like Harden because of his ability to do it at every level. Like, it is just so absurd. I've been calling him the most versatile and the best on-ball scoring guard for more than a year now, and he just keeps getting better. The levels of efficiency that he's at, man, like, again, it's so absurd. It doesn't get talked about enough. Out of pick and roll and isolation, this guy scores 1.19 points per possession. That is incomprehensible. There is no way to leave that guy on an island. There is just no way you can stomach that. You literally have to say, fine, we'll deal with 3-on-4s because we cannot let Shai be comfortable against us as a scorer. It's GOAT level stuff. And again, the value of that, I know I've been beating this drum with Shai for a long time, but people undervalue him. This season, Shai makes an argument for being one of the handful of greatest offensive players we have ever seen. This is where I struggle with ranking him on our offensive peaks because I was like, this year, Shai is obviously not just stamped in the top 10, but higher than that. The challenge is just he's better this year than last year when he was better than the year before that. So how do you evaluate a 3-year peak there? But specifically this season, man, if you look at the points per possession that Shai is responsible for ending, this is a stat that I like to look at because it just sort of measures the efficiency of the offensive results you are responsible for. Possessions that you end with a shot, a turnover, or an assist. The offense that Shai is creating is just as efficient as the offense that Jokic is creating this season. And that's a bar that has been like untouchable. That's what I want to hammer home. We talk about these guys purely as offensive players this season. Shai has been as unstoppable, as effective, as efficient as Jokic while having the aspect of, again, it being such an easy team build around him because you just give him spot-up shooters who are decent. And for the love of God, throw him one guy you can handle out there. He doesn't even need that guy, but it certainly helps. And you become this absolutely elite offense. All the while you can engineer a historic defense with him as a part of it so easily, which you could not do with Jokic. So I still think, gun to my head, Jokic is the better offensive player, but the margin is so thin that when it comes to that overall team build, give me Shai as my starting point. And by the way, in this matchup, I know there are some people who will say, oh, it's unfair to compare these guys head-to-head because Jokic is going up against OKC's defense, which is historic, and Shai is going up against Denver's defense, which is pretty average. I just don't buy that argument. When you look at the schemes that Denver is deploying against Shai, like, he is having to deal with actually one of his more difficult matchups because they just throw the kitchen sink at him. I think David Adelman is a great coach. I think he is very creative in terms of the defensive schemes, and I think they're taking the right approach, and Shai is just outperforming Jokic. Like, I think they're both taking on very difficult matchups, and one guy is performing better. Like, there is a level of scoring threat with Shai that, to me, is the single scariest offensive trait in the NBA right now. No question. It's scarier than anything else out there. Like, it is absolutely absurd what he can do to you on ball and the risks that you have to take defensively to account for that. And there's just really no way that you're going to win that battle if dudes around him are making shots at a decent clip, because Shai plus decent play finishing around him plus this defense is an unbeatable formula, truly.
Yeah, Shai has such a unique gravity that I think is different from some of the other superstars that we've looked at in recent memory. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Steph and Jokic's gravity, because we always talk about it, is so intuitive, right? Because they do it from the three-point line in the post. And so I think it's really easy for you to envision, oh, you know, they got to send two out on the ball on the perimeter. You have to play up and over every single screen for Jokic. You have to send doubles in the post.
Right.
SGA has this gravity that just kind of moves with him wherever he is on the court, because that's what you have to do. And I know you love to reference stuff like this when you talk about Jokic, but it's so impressive to me. Go to NBA.com, look at SGA's percentages by zone, by shot distance. Inside the arc, he is over 50% from anywhere you chop up the court. I mean, that means that he is more likely than not to make the shot wherever he is at inside the arc. And then you add in the fact that he's a 38% three-point shooter, climbing, and it's such an unreal, stupid number that you mentioned earlier, 44% on step-backs. Like I said, man, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but, like, I literally just don't know what you do with the guy other than completely compromise your defense every single possession down the floor or just employ a flat-out gimmick.
Yeah, genuinely. And by the way, 44% on step-back threes. Guess what he shoots on step-back twos? Over 59%. Like, this is levels of self-created offense. Yeah, man. You cannot stop Shai from getting to his spot, and you cannot stop him from making those shots at elite efficiency unless you are going to do these crazy aggressive things that we're doing. And the thing is, I just think last year was the most vulnerable Shai is ever going to be when you look at that playoff run. When I still thought he was really good, I still thought he was the best player in the Denver series, the best player in that postseason overall. Like, there was a transitional phase for him every series where he was sort of getting adjusted to some of the looks that he was seeing, and he could be a little bit too shoot first at times, so he wasn't like the most efficient version of himself. Like, there comes a point where when you keep showing a guy like Shai these looks because it's the only option you have, he's just going to get more comfortable and better against them, and the playmaking reads are going to become easier, and that's where we're at with Shai. Like, this game looked easy for him, man. He is dealing with a crowd damn near every possession. He has somebody shading him damn near every possession. If Shai is isolating on the right wing, the help is like slanted towards his side so aggressively that there's going to be an open player on the wing opposite pretty much every time. That's what defenses have to do. And in that environment, he is somehow still comfortable scoring with crazy efficiency. And then, as you mentioned, the court mapping, the anticipation, his accuracy as a passer, his composure as a ball handler, there is nothing you can do. It is just absolutely incredible what this guy is doing this season. I am blown away. I have been so high on Shai for years, and he just continues to cement that I have the utmost faith in this guy. And now I really do think that if I had to pick one, he's the best player in the world. I mean, the guy shoots over 60% on twos. I just don't think it gets talked about enough. We have a guard who is scoring per 75 possessions, like 34 points on plus 9% relative true shooting, and there's no offensive waste in his game. I know this is a lot of Shai Glaze, but I think the people love it. I think the people come here for Shai Glaze, and after a game like this, how can you not? And by the way, Jokic was amazing in this game. Jokic did some crazy shit in the fourth quarter. Jokic had a super efficient 34-point triple-double, and it still just felt different. The level of impact that Shai was having every single possession was different to me. Absolutely incredible.
specifically where you kind of brought this up when you were talking about Jokic versus SGA, but one of the things that I do think leans in favor of SGA too is the component that you were talking about with the team defense, where I feel like, and I've talked about this a lot with a guy like Domantas Sabonis. It's not that I don't see the value in a guy like Domantas Sabonis, but what I've always held true is that, and this isn't true with Jokic because Jokic is one of the greatest offensive players ever, but I really highly value a defensive big man who you can bank on, who you can build your defense out around, where Denver sometimes feels like they have to gimmick the defense up because of some of Jokic's shortcomings. And this is an area where when we get to a playoff series, and you mentioned this earlier, this is a game without Chet Holmgren and a game without Isaiah Hartenstein. What really worries me is just what Denver has to do with him in the paint, where Jokic is rigid in terms of he likes to be in that drop coverage, but also even when Denver employs that zone, which you would see OKC do a lot on the backside, and I think this is a big reason why a guy like Jay Will went off, and shout out him. He had a fantastic game, really, outside of that one play at the end. Whoever they have on Jokic at the block, that guy will sneak across the baseline and go to the opposite corner, so whoever creates the dribble penetration, Jokic either has to stay camped in the lane, which is going to lead to an easy kick-out pass to an open shooter, or they have to switch it and Jokic has to take on the driving guy and they have to return and switch back out to the perimeter. I just think Jokic does leave you desiring more in terms of that team defense context where, again, you're having to employ these sort of gimmicks. He just is limited in that way. And I hesitate to even call Jokic a bad defender because I actually think Jokic is engaged. And, that's a big part of defense in general is just giving that effort. But there are just limitations that come with Jokic where if it's him defending one-on-one in coverages against different kinds of archetypes, where I actually think, ironically, without Holmgren and Hartenstein, because there's not a guy like that, I actually think he's a little bit more compromised because he has to defend in more space. And so that's just a little point that you were touching on earlier that I think tips the scales a little bit in the favor of SGA even more because, again, I think Jokic's defensive shortcomings get a little bit overplayed, but he has athletic limitations and stuff like that where Denver's defense is always going to be a little bit compromised because of how important the center position is in defense. And when we are looking at a playoff environment, that's another thing where I see the scales tipped in favor of SGA and OKC.
I think it is a huge point, and this is as somebody who has defended Jokic, just to say that he's a decent defender, because I do believe he is that. I believe that he brings elite defensive rebounding value. He has great hands. He's an extremely high IQ defensive player, but maybe the most underrated part about Shai's greatness is his defense, purely because of what it allows him to be a part of. Again, when I'm talking about reaching this level of GOAT team heights that the Thunder have been at over the last 2 years, you could never build a defense that is as historically great with Jokic on the floor as you can with Shai on the floor. Even if Shai in some of these lineups is only the 5th best defender, him being a plus, a clear plus, while bringing this all-time great offensive value compared to Jokic, who is a fine defender, but does have certain limitations because he brings such little rim protection value, because he is really a bad drop defender, so you have to often bring him up to the level, which means to some extent putting two on the ball.
Can I tell you one of my new, I'm becoming more pilled to in terms of centers?
Yeah.
I'm becoming more space-pilled with centers, and what I mean by that is literal ground you can cover in a short period of time.
Absolutely. It matters. And so even though Jokic makes the most of his physical abilities defensively, there is still a limitation there at still the most important position that does get brought into action most often, where other guys at the position are delivering outlier value with really strong rim protection, and Jokic obviously is one of the worst rim protecting centers in the NBA when you look specifically at that one thing. The heights that you can reach building around Shai, when you know that with him you can have a GOAT level defense, and obviously that takes them putting the sort of defenders around him that OKC has, but they can do that. They can slant their roster aggressively towards that side of the ball because they know with Shai on the floor, again, regardless of Chet, J-Dub, any of those guys are out there, the Thunder are going to be like a +8 relative offense, which is all-time offense. And when he's off the floor, they are a below-average offense. Like, that's what's happened over these last 2 years. And so the ceiling there with Shai, I just think is damn near as high as it is building around any player in NBA history. And I do think even higher than Jokic. Obviously, it's pretty damn easy to build championship-level teams around either one of these guys because they're both so insanely good. But I do think, like, with Shai, it is easier to reach even higher heights of all-time team dominance.
And I just wanted to add, on the inverse of that, when you look at a guy like Jokic, you clearly see that's how Denver has built their team out around him with defensively slanted players because they have to make up on that end, you know, with guys like Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon. But I fundamentally agree, man. We always, you know, I tend to give these guys slack because I like them and I root for them, and I think they are limited extra, but it's like the Detroit Pistons, right? They've built this defensive juggernaut around Cade, but it's like the reason the offense doesn't lack is just because that's how great Shai is. Because Shai is so fucking unstoppable, you can build this defensively slanted personnel and this offensively limited personnel around him. I will say, we are talking about the offensive limitations of the supporting cast. Shout out the return of AJ Mitchell, man, in this game.
Man, dude.
I mean, holy shit, that has been sorely lacked and sorely missing from this OKC recipe. I know that we brought him up last NBA episode when we talked about one of the best, if not the best, bargain contracts in basketball. I think he continues to return that value. Wow. What a difference did he make, man. I mean, just in terms of a guy that can score at every level, and don't get me wrong, AJ had some bad missed shots last night. If it was him airballing a couple of threes or missing some runners ugly, the guy can score at every level and get to any of those shots with ease. And what I think you notice when teams are defending AJ is so good at getting downhill and scoring at the rim and scoring on those floaters and runners. Teams are almost content with running that drop coverage and going underneath on screens and stuff, and they will concede that pull-up three to AJ, which by far I think is his least effective shot, but it is still a shot he is very comfortable and capable of making. And so it's like a guy like that, or a guy like Jared McCain, who I think I underestimated the value of adding a guy like him at the deadline. Having guys like that can score at all these different levels, that can break down a defense, and have those guys, you know, be your, I was going to say tertiary, but I don't know, man, your fourth or fifth guys down the roster, they make a real meaningful difference to me when we're talking about an OKC playoff run this year, where I look at a team like Denver, and as much as I love Jamal Murray and a Jokic and the ease that those two guys create offensively, there's a lack of a creator like that down the roster for Denver, right? As much as I like the bench and the pieces that they've added, those are difference makers for OKC, and I don't want to undersell their value. SGA put on a masterpiece, but when we're talking about a playoff, and they're down, I mean, damn, I can't emphasize it enough. Being down Holmgren and Hartenstein and Dub, it's crazy, but having those kind of guys down the roster and guys who can break down people in isolation, it's just huge, man, and it makes me that much more confident in OKC being the title frontrunner this season.
I completely agree. They're game-changing players. And I've been hammering home this point with AJ Mitchell. I just made a YouTube video where I talked about the most underrated players in the NBA, and he's absolutely one of them. Like, this dude is a star-level player. He is that good offensively while being a plus defender, by the way, and so important for a Thunder team that needed a third ball handler coming into the year. There were very few needs on this team. That was one of them. And has frankly just been like a way better second creator this year than Jalen Williams. When AJ Mitchell has been on the floor, the Thunder have basically been unstoppable. They're 38-6 in games that he plays. They have like a plus 18 net rating when he's on the floor. Like, people don't know nationally nearly how important this guy is.
And those lineups with him and SGA are viable, too, because he's a good enough defender and he doesn't stop the ball, you know?
100%, dude. He's such a complete offensive player. Good feel off ball, but on ball, like, pick and roll isolation, really effective scorer, crafty getting downhill, really good rim finisher for his size, great floater touch, as you mentioned, can make the pull-up three if you give it to him, and a crafty, creative passer. All the while, he competes his ass off defensively. He's good in transition. Like, he is so important. This dude, per 36 minutes, averages 25 and 5 on 59% true shooting. Like, he is such a good offensive player, such a good player all around. And then Jared McCain, what's the other one need that we've talked about? A consistent high-level spot-up shooter on this roster. This guy, considering the cost they got him at, are you kidding me?
Pennies on the dollar, man.
Daryl Morey's confident he's selling high? Daryl, buddy. Maybe James Harden is right about you. Maybe you are a liar and a thief and a cheat. Like, what are you talking about? He is averaging per 36 minutes 22 points on 43% from deep for OKC. Like, these are guys you can close games with, and they can play off of Shai so well, and AJ can alleviate the every possession pressure that Shai has, and AJ can attack 4-on-3s so creatively, and Jared McCain can just knock down threes off the catch if he has any space to do so. They legitimately take this OKC team up another level. And I know I've done so much OKC glaze this year. I think they're underrated. I think this year's team is significantly better than last year's team because Shai is better, because AJ Mitchell is a revelation. Now McCain is another revelation. Like, we just haven't seen this team sustain the 70-win pace they were at earlier this year because of injuries. Like, I truly believe that. They've had so many injuries, and by the way, they still have, I think, the 8th best single-season net rating in NBA history right now. It's incredible. Again, people talk about the help that Shai has, but I think what you need to contextualize is, first of all, what Shai has done even when AJ has been out, even before they had a Jared McCain, all this stuff, and really how much of that help is defensive, and then it's, can we get any couple guys on this roster to help out Shai offensively? And now they've gotten a couple of those guys, and it just makes this team feel unstoppable. And props to Jay Will, too, by the way, a guy who, whenever he is asked to step up and play big minutes, can compete defensively, high feel offensively, valuable ability to stretch the floor. He was so good in this game. I just couldn't be feeling better about the Thunder. Like, if Jalen Williams didn't play again this season, the Oklahoma City Thunder would be my title favorites. That's how good they are. It's just absurd. On the other side, the one guy who I want to shout out for Denver is Tim Hardaway Jr., because I do think you felt the value of him in this game, and you felt it in a number of games this season, just the sort of explosive shooting ceiling that he has as a guy who can do it off movement in transition against contests. He makes 8 threes in this game. Like, that is a game-swinging offensive player on the bench who they have not had previously, and so important considering how much Christian Braun has struggled offensively in this series. And that's the problem they have with Braun, is he's important defensively, really important. Offensively, OKC just is able to force him into his worst tendencies and really make him an ineffective offensive player who jacks up more threes than he would like to and misses a majority of them and can't get his usual offense as a cutter because of how they pack the paint and swarm Jokic, and it's just really problematic. But THJ is a guy where it's like, you can close with him. He can make a game-winning shot. He can go on a big third, fourth quarter run. Like, he's one of those offensive players who really does matter in that way.
He's a series swinging kind of guy to me, where he could be the difference in Denver losing or winning in an individual series with his hot shooting. Braun, I think it's a confidence thing with Braun, man. And when I listen to some of his comments that he says in the media, it really makes me worry about him and his personal image. I know that may sound stupid, but life, like basketball, is a confidence game, and it's one of my favorite things about SGA. I think SGA is a little bit of a head ass sometimes. Like,
he's an aura farmer.
He wears a different outfit before every game, and every single outfit costs 10 bands. It's like, all right, but he also is the best player on the planet, so I can't talk too much shit. Braun, I saw one comment from him that really bothered me when he was like, I never thought that I'd play in the NBA. And it just kind of makes me wonder if he feels like sometimes mentally if he's outmatched or if he doesn't belong. And, like, I know that, I just mean in how that you have to be irrationally confident to be a great shooter in basketball. And I just wonder if that affects Braun in ways like, sure, we can talk mechanics and we can talk this and developing. I don't think Braun's going to deliver on that contract. And it really makes me wonder if Denver should move off of him next season. And I think Braun is a winning basketball player. I think he does winning things. He's a really good defender. He's an energy, a hustle guy. But do I want to be paying that guy $25 million when he is a liability offensively come playoff time? I don't know, especially when we've seen from the emergence of a guy like Peyton Watson.
Totally.
And so I really wonder if Denver jumped the gun by giving him that payday, and if he should be a guy that is on the chopping block come offseason. The final thing I want to mention on Denver, they so desperately need Aaron Gordon to be 100%.
Yeah.
And that's an area where I also worry about Denver. You know, I have two more things on Denver. The Aaron Gordon component, he was so great last season, and I'm concerned.
This season.
He's been great this year too, but I'm concerned about him getting back to the level that he was last year on such a short ramp-up period. And don't get me wrong, we've got enough time for him to get there, but like he was playing the best basketball of his career last year, and I think they need that Aaron Gordon 100%, firing on all cylinders. I think Aaron Gordon can be great, but if Aaron Gordon is going to be 85-90% of what he was last year, I don't think that's good enough to get Denver over the hump to the finals. I think they need every bit of juice that they can get out of Aaron Gordon this season. The final thing I was just going to say is I wonder if the OKC defense has just solved Denver. And I don't mean that in the sense that, like, they score 126 points, right? I'm not saying that OKC is going to shut down Denver, but I think they have figured out, they have seen this team. You mentioned it. They have seen this team so many times over the past few seasons that even down key personnel that you would look at and say that these are the guys that negate and, slow up Jokic's value. They know exactly what coverages to employ. They know exactly what schemes to employ. Even down three of their best defensive players in Dub, Holmgren, and Hartenstein, they know exactly how to play Murray and Jokic every single possession. And I just don't think Denver has enough of an abundance or even enough requisite offensive talent outside of those guys to really punish OKC and to really beat them. And those are just my hangups with Denver, man. I don't know how Denver beats OKC in a 7-game series fully healthy, man. I thought that was on the table. I think their offense could be great enough. I just don't see it, man. I think OKC is just too damn good.
It is hard to see. I agree. Because what I said coming into the year is it's like, all right, best offense versus best defense. If you get just an incredible Jokic series where he clearly asserts himself as the best player in the world, that's pretty much the formula. And Jamal has to play better than he had in this matchup. And Jamal has just continued to struggle in this matchup. And overall, over the last 2 years, even though this was a really, really good Jokic game, he has struggled by his standards against OKC, right? He has performed worse against them than any other defense, and markedly so. All the while, Shai has just gotten better and better, and when we see this matchup over and over again, 2/3 of the time, you're like, yeah, Shai was the best player on the floor. If OKC also has the better overall team in this defensive formula that is so effective, and now they've added more supporting offensive talent, it's like, why would I expect this to go differently? I understand last 2 games have been super close, but OKC's won both of them with major absences. And Denver had some significant absences when they played the time before this as well. But I just think the formula with OKC is so reliable. And I think it's repeatedly worked against Denver. Denver, since last season against OKC, has a 110 offensive rating over 14 games. It's just a massive drop-off in offensive effectiveness that everyone experiences against OKC. And Denver is not at all immune to that. Jamal Murray, 52% true shooting in this matchup since last season. He just repeatedly struggles against them. Like you said, it becomes harder and harder to see a world where Denver actually wins that series. Everybody keeps coming to me after this game and saying, oh my God, I hope we get 7 games of that. And I'm all with you. I want an epic Nuggets Thunder playoff series this year. That would be peak basketball. Do I think it's going 7 games though? If I were a betting man, I would say probably not. OKC probably takes care of business quicker than that. I just think they have given us every reason to believe that that's what they could and would do. So it's a great win for them. It's an amazing game. Props to Shai for tying that Wilt record, and now he's going to break it, and I can't wait to see how long he's going to go. This is a regular season record only, but I've been saying for more than a year now that Shai has a top 2 scoring floor in NBA history, him and Michael Jordan, and I think in terms of the regular season, Shai has the highest scoring floor we've ever seen. I think that's what this streak speaks to. I think it's what we talk about with the ability to, with the ball in his hands, get to a high percentage shot from anywhere on the floor over and over and over again. with the ability to generate free throws, like there's just no way to force him into a quiet game as a scorer and as an offensive player overall. It's really, really outstanding, all-time great stuff. That's enough Thunder glaze and that's enough Shai glaze for now. I think I could go for a little more, but I imagine the people have had enough. We'll get back to it at the end of this episode. The one last thing I do want to say about this game, I don't agree with your Christian Braun point about it being a confidence thing. Like, I wouldn't read into that quote about him not thinking he was going to make it to the NBA. I imagine that he meant, I'm a 6'5" white kid from Overland Park, Kansas, like 4-star recruit in high school, but not super highly touted guy. I think he is somebody who at various moments like shows you that he's got a lot of confidence on the basketball court. I mean, like you said, fiery energy and like somebody who loves to stand up and flex. Like, I don't think that he fears the moment. I think he is just a bad shooter of the basketball. Like, I think it's kind of that simple. He's a bad free throw shooter. He had a good shooting regular season last year on a small sample size. This year, like, it's not just, in a big game, I struggle to shoot. He shoots 27% from three this season after he was 29% from three in the playoffs last year. I think it is a skill weakness that is holding him back, that OKC is very adept at scheming towards, that is holding him back. I don't think it's confidence. I think it's literal lack of shooting skill. And that manifests itself in, you can feel it at times where he's like, I don't really want to take the shot. But it hasn't been a lack of volume. I mean, Christian Braun has put up like 6 threes a game against OKC over the last 2 years. He's actually taking too many threes. I wish he were taking fewer, but you understand why he feels like he has to take them, because he's open and he just can't make them.
It's it. I mean, you're right. It's like a cycle. It goes in tandem, right?
Yeah,
you miss, you lose confidence, and it plays back. But yeah, I mean, at the bottom line, I really wonder if the Nuggets are going to have to, I don't know, attach a pick or attach a player or something. I don't really know who would want that contract, to be honest with you.
I think you're totally right. And Peyton Watson is better, and I think they have to prioritize him. So that is definitely, considering the fact that they have Nikola Jokic, and you know how much he amplifies your offensive supporting cast, and a player like Brown, and they have great synergy. They have great feel together. But I just think that was an overpay, considering that his value is somewhat replaceable for this team, right? Like, especially if you let a KCP walk at that moment, and they tried to get KCP, so it's not a one-to-one comparison, but paying Christian Braun, of all people, probably not the best choice for their long-term prospects. We'll see how that all goes down after this season. For now, Logan, we got to get into these top 10 contenders, and I'm going to try to limit my yapping on this. Probably impossible, considering I yap like no other. I think I went for like 15 minutes on Shai earlier, but going to try not to beat any dead horses here. Let's start with your 10 spot, Logan. Who is the last team on the list for you here?
So I had 3 omissions. To be clear, when we were doing these top 10 rankings, I do not actually think 10 NBA teams can win the championship. Yep. So even going down this far is a little bit redundant, but we have to make it a clean, nice top 10.
For the 3 teams, for a sexy viral graphic.
Exactly. The 3 teams that I omitted for various reasons, the Philadelphia 76ers were probably my toughest cut. I have been a 76ers denier for a long time. Sadly. I think that a Joel Embiid healthy playoff run would need to be required for them to get out of the East, or to win a playoff series or 2 to make an ECF run. I think they're talented. I like a lot of the athleticism that the Sixers have, but I just don't believe in that. The Rockets, I know a lot of people would have the Rockets still in their top 10. I just can't see them coming out of the West, to be quite frank. So I don't know why I'd even put them on my list. I just think we've seen their offensive shortcomings. Like, I know the argument, top 10, both sides of the ball, nice size, big, long defensive team, but I just think their offense is going to get exploited in the playoffs in a bad way with some of their shooting woes, with Sengun struggles, with Amen Thompson struggles. And I want to be clear about something. If Steven Adams was healthy, they would be in my top 10, no doubt. But I just think losing Steven Adams eliminates their one superpower, which is their ability to dominate the possession margin. And without that, without a point guard, with some of the, again, skill limitations, I don't seriously consider Houston. And then the final team, I know you've been a big supporter of them, Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah, baby.
Were in consideration for me. I wanted to put them in my 10 spot. I think that offense is a beast. And I think that was enough for them, and maybe a late season surge could propel them. Number 10 in my contender rankings is a team I have been a longtime advocate for since the preseason. I just like to slide in and shout out the Toronto Raptors here in my 10 spot. I like a lot of what the Raptors have going on. They are a big, long defensive team. RJ Barrett has had a nice run as of late. And I just think that defense and the offensive skill that they do have is enough for them to warrant a mention and a shout-out. They are really switchable. They've got a lot of big, long, rangy guys, not just in the starting five. If it's Scotty Barnes, if it's Brandon Ingram, Jakob Poeltl, down to the bench guys, right? I really like Colin Murray-Boyles. Mamu Kelishvili has been one of the best bench players in basketball this season. Even the guards, right? Long, lanky guys like Quickly and Shed. I know what's going to get the Raptors in the playoffs. It's their lack of half-court offense and their shooting specifically. Their shooting is putrid. I think this offseason they're going to have to move off some of these guys for floor spacers, right? They're 22nd in three-point percentage on the year. They're 25th in three-point attempts and makes. That's just not serious. I do like a lot of what the Raptors have. I think Brandon Ingram is a really underrated offensive player. The guy can just rise and fire over anybody in the half court. He's a damn good playmaker now. I like RJ Barrett's driving. I think he's been a lot better over this recent stretch. And when his three ball is on, he's a really complete player. I think RJ can kind of get underrated. Quickly as a guy who has the potential to go off and give you big scoring nights. I just think the Raptors are really solid. They're not anything special. They're not going to wow you. I think they have a lot of these shortcomings that I'm talking about with some of these other teams. If it's the Houston Rockets, like they're a big team. They're strong defensively. They're good on the glass. But their offense just isn't good enough to be higher. But I like what I've seen from the Raptors, and I think it's been an encouraging year from them. But they have a lot of the shortcomings of some of these teams that I'm going to be critical of come playoff time and in this episode. But I like the Raptors, so I'll shout them out. They're going to come in my 10 spot.
I'm going to be honest, I really wish we could cut off this list at 8. Like, once we get into 9 and 10, I think we're looking at, like, pretty much mediocre basketball teams, and I would say you can pretty much go 9 through 15, 16, and I'm not really going to be pressed either way. I think the Raptors are a valid choice. I think they're a very good team defense. I think they do have good depth. Ultimately, I worry about the stuff that you laid out. Just who do I really trust in terms of half-court offense there? Especially, I can worry about both IQ and Ingram against really athletic switching defenses. I think they can struggle to actually penetrate in those spots, and you can force them into tougher shot diets, and then I don't really trust the shooting around them. And overall, I just don't really see that trait with this team that should put a scare into anybody who is like significantly better than them. And that's kind of my criteria when we're talking about these teams where it's like, all right, puncher's chance at beating somebody, which is 9, 10 spot. I'm valuing potential. I'm valuing upside more so. So that's something else to always clarify here. These aren't our power rankings. It's not who's playing the best right now. It's who do you think has the best chance to go on a deep run, ultimately win the NBA title. There's a team that I like more from the East in my 10 spot, given that criteria. And it's a team that I feel like I've had in my 10 spot. I think all 3 times we've done this during the season, I still have the Philadelphia 76ers here. I just think there's a ceiling there that is higher than the other teams I'm looking at. Like, I thought about a couple teams out west. The Clippers, I'm not ready to quit on. Now that Garland is back out there, like since trading Harden, they're still 8-5 and 11th in net rating in that time. Kawhi is playing at a ridiculous level. They've got a relatively good two-way roster. I think ultimately losing both Harden and Zubats is too significant, but Garland just got back out there faster than I was expecting, which does add some real offensive juice here and like a really, really good pick and roll creator to that offense. Ultimately, they're pretty mid, though, as things currently stand. I did note down the Warriors just for the theoretical potential where Steph is healthy and KP is healthy. I think they could be in the 10 spot because, ironically, even though they lose a lot when Steph is out of the lineup, of course, like I've been broadly encouraged by how tough they've hung around in a lot of these games, and I think a lot of guys are playing well on this roster. Pods is playing better. D'Anthony Melton has been really good as like another ball handler for them and somebody who can fit in defensively. There's a lot of dudes up and down the roster, Moody and Guy Santos, all these guys playing pretty well. I think they're a high field team. I think they have a pretty high defensive ceiling. And then because of Steph alone, like there's a clear formula to them being a pretty good offense. And then healthy KP injects like some front court talent here and some mismatch attacking and shooting and rim protection and all this stuff that they've really needed. However, I'm worried about Steph's injury situation. I don't think KP is going to be healthy. I just think the dude is chronically ill and can never get on the basketball court. But at least shout out to the Warriors for that. I did have the Hornets down as an HM. Since January 1st, they're first in net rating. They're first in offensive rating. They're sixth in defensive rating. They're 21-11. They're just flat out a really good team. Ultimately, I looked at the team in my 10 spot and I was like, with Philly, I get a higher defensive ceiling, I think, and I do get like that superstar factor of how Maxey and Embiid can collectively take over a game, I think is really pretty impressive. Like the ceiling there is really high, but I just made a video about the Hornets the other week. Like I'm super high on them. I think their offense is outstanding. I think LaMelo is playing his best basketball ever. I really like Brandon Miller in this offense. Kahn has unlocked so much with his shooting and his feel. They're brilliantly coached. They compete well on the margins. They're an elite offensive rebounding team. Like there's a lot that I like with them. I don't think their defense is nearly as good as the recent numbers would suggest, though. I do think their offense is elite, but I ended up leaving them off because I prefer the defensive talent and the elite top-end talent I get with Philly. They are 21-12 when Joel Embiid plays this year, and since Embiid really started looking like himself, since January 1st, they're 14-5 when he plays, and he was averaging 30 points per game and 4.5 assists on 64% true shooting. I just think the combination of an elite pick-and-roll scoring guard like Maxey with the combination of speed and pull-up shooting that he has and how he can put teams in a bind and can drop more than 30 points a game against you in a series, and then you've got a guy who can still be such an incredibly tough cover from the mid-high post, just with a combination of shot making and craft, foul drawing, size that you have with Joel Embiid. Like, those are two really elite scorers of the basketball, and I think this team has solid defensive personnel. I think that they have solid wings. Like, there's a lot that I look at with them, and I'm like, that's at least B level. And then you've got two players who I feel can take over a playoff game or a series with enough around them for me to put you in my 10 spot. But ultimately, I think their defense is pretty much just okay. Their shooting is pretty much just okay. And they are very reliant on a healthy Embiid, which is not, to me, a likely outcome. But because I'm positivity maxing here and I'm emphasizing upside, I liked their ceiling more than any of the other teams who I considered for my 10 spot.
Yeah, I understand that. I do have an East team that has risen for me. I'll get to them in a second. An East team that has steadily dropped like a stone. Shout out Audio Slave.
Whoa.
I've got the Detroit Pistons in my 9 spot, and I'm really disappointed that this is the conclusion that I have reached. It's been staring me in my face for a long time here. I've been a longtime Pistons advocate. I just don't see it anymore, and I think this recent skid is really scaring me off. They've lost 4 straight against Cleveland, San Antonio, Brooklyn, and Miami. Now, Asar Thompson missed the games against Brooklyn and Miami. They blew a 23-point lead versus Brooklyn. Cade Cunningham also missed that game. I'm just off them. Man, I just do not think they have the creators that they need or the shooting. They so clearly and desperately need a second shot, an advantage creator, and I've been an advocate for the Pistons for a long time. I know what they do special. I think that they're going to make any playoff series against any team they play a mud fight, a dog fight. But I think what they give you in that built-in dog margin from the defense and the rebounding and the paint scoring, they are also going to give back in half-court offense ineptitude. And so what the Pistons are going to be relying on in a playoff series is them completely dominating the other team defensively. And if they can do that, I think the Pistons have a chance to win a playoff series because they're going to win defensively, they're going to get out on the fast break, and they're going to score a lot in transition, and that is the strength of this team. But if another opposing offense can slow them down and answer and make them work in the half court, I think it's going to be equally... It's going to balance itself out, and I think it's going to be a grimy series that is basically a 50-50 kind of toss-up. And not to dog on this guy, because I really like this guy as a prospect. He was very similar to another guy. I think back, and I really wish they had taken Matas Buzelis when they had the opportunity instead of a guy like Ron Holland. And that's how I felt at the time. That's how I feel now. I really liked Holland. I didn't like his fit with Detroit. Something that we talked about after draft night happened, it was a little bit of a redundancy with a guy like Asar Thompson. They're both these athletic defensive wings who, we just like Asar more. He's more of a defensive freak. But specifically, I always felt with Ron's raw game, and I like Holland a lot with all the things that he could do, I thought he needed to go to a losing situation. Kind of like Jaden Ivey, too. Both of those picks where I was like, these guys need the ball in their hands. They need the freedom to make mistakes and grow. And unfortunately, Detroit has been in a spot, unfortunately for them, not for Detroit, Detroit has been a spot that has been ready to win. And I just don't think that was the right pick. I look back and I'm like, man, if they had a guy like Buzelis, who is just a little bit of a better shooter, can put the ball on the floor a little bit more than a guy like Ron Holland, who is just a better connector at this stage in his career and ready, I think, to impact winning. They just don't have the personnel. They don't have the shooting. They don't have the second creator. That's the thing that I keep coming back with Detroit, and I'll let the cat out of the bag. I like Miami more than Detroit, and I'm ready to bump them up, and I've got them one spot above Detroit in my power rankings, not just because of this last game, but because of their personnel. I just think Miami has a better playoff recipe than, and I know this is going to sound shocking because Detroit has been such a rock-solid regular season team. I don't think this is an overreaction. I just think this is a reality of Detroit's limited personnel when we were talking about them in a playoff series, and I just think Miami's got the horses, and I don't think Detroit does.
Whoa, man. I was not expecting a Miami over Detroit take on the pod today. That is pretty wild. I have Detroit at number 8, which I think is definitely lower than the consensus, and I think is exactly where I had them a couple months ago when we did this. I don't want to sell short the margin they do create with like truly elite team defense that is a level up from Miami's, and with having a offensive player the caliber of Cade Cunningham and what he can do in terms of improving the shot quality for his teammates and being able to manage some of the bad spacing that Detroit does have.
Can I tell you what it is?
Sure.
It really is that second creator, man. When I watch Detroit, and I don't think I'm over-exaggerating when I say this, guys are scared to put the ball on the floor. They
don't have a guy.
They need Cade Cunningham to hold their hand every possession in the half court. Like, dude, Marcus Sasser doesn't want to put the rock on the floor. Dennis Jenkins can't put the rock on the floor. Like, there is just nobody. When I look at a team like Miami, even though they may be more limited, Davion Mitchell can create a little penetration. Norman Powell can do his thing. Tyler Hero is a legitimately good pick-and-roll creator. Like, there's just more offensive skill with Miami than Detroit.
There is more offensive skill, but like several of their best offensive players I really worry about in a playoff series. Like, I think that Hero is somebody who we can see struggle against like really athletic teams, physical teams that switch a lot and force him to beat them more so on an island. Like, he can be less effective in that sort of atmosphere. Norman Powell is somebody who I think, just by the nature of being more of like a real off-ball scorer and having a very limited playmaking impact, like he can have some quiet playoff series. Bam is somebody who, with the lack of just like playmaking guards in this offense, he can be forced into a tough shot diet in the playoff series. I just don't think Miami's offense is very good is what it comes down to. So if I had to pick between, hey, bet on Cade and the Pistons defense, I would do that over the Heat. I think the Heat are in that tier of mediocre, of like whatever, the 9 through 15, 16. I'd hear a case for them. Detroit, I think we have to give credit to what they have done, what they've done up against some of the best teams in the league, and just like the results overall this year are much better. I'm worried about Detroit. I've been worried about Detroit. I just don't think Miami's that good.
I'll get to Miami in a minute, but
okay.
Who do you got in your 9 spot?
Well, I want to talk about Detroit first because I have them at number 8, and we share a lot of the same concerns. I just think I don't want to be overly negative about this team because I've been critical of them a lot this year, just up against a lot of the hype that has been swirling. I worry about the offense. 18th in half-court offense is pretty much a disqualifier from a deep title run. One of the worst three-point shooting teams in the NBA, a team that totally lacks creation around Cade. And Cade himself is somebody who really good team defenses, right? Like some of the ones that we've seen in the East. If it's Boston, if it's Cleveland, like if you have big physical wing or like 6'6" kind of stocky type guys you can throw at him, you can force him into a relatively tough mid-range heavy shot diet. And as we talked about, he doesn't really self-create very efficient offense because he can struggle to finish at the rim and he can struggle to shoot from beyond the arc. So for all those reasons, I just think you see way too many down offensive nights for them. If it's Cade going 4 of 16 against the Cavs and then him being 7 of 23 deep into that game against the Spurs, where he's got this huge offensive burden on his plate and he's just not consistent enough as a scorer. And then you go to the Heat game and it's like, okay, now Cade plays well and everybody around him makes 5 combined threes. I give a lot of credit to Detroit squeezing everything they have out of their roster. Ultimately, I think they are just too defensively slanted. As we've said, they have too many deeply offensively flawed players on this roster for me to bet on them making a deep run. I do think they're the 4th best team in the East, but I do still think they're better than Miami. I honestly want to get to that before I even get to the team in my 9th spot.
Okay.
Give me the Miami propaganda.
I don't really fundamentally disagree with any of the concerns you're making about individual players, but I just think Tyler Hero's return makes everybody better. I just think Hero has gotten better as an offensive lead guy, dictating, creating out of pick and roll, enhancing all of his teammates. I think he makes guys like Bam Adebayo and like Khalil Ware better. I love the defense from Miami. I think they've got a great collective. They've been top 5 in defensive rating on the season. And like I said, it really is the sum of their parts and not really one individual guy. Obviously, Cade Cunningham is the best offensive player out of these two teams, but there are just more contributors who can give me juice on a given night out of Miami than Detroit, right? If it's a Norman Powell. And I do think there are some redundancies with Hero and Powell that I worry about, but they're both really good. And if you stagger their minutes, I've got a guy that I believe in offensively enough on the court at all times. Jaime Jaquez, when he's out there, like, there's just more aggregate and offensive skill in totality with Miami when I feel like I'm also getting a borderline elite defense. Andrew Wiggins has been hurt. I think when he's out there, they're a damn good defense too. Like, I just like Miami in totality versus Detroit. When I look at Detroit, I just see redundancies. I see offensive guys that are going to get exploited. And I know what Detroit can do. I just think Miami can match offensively a lot of teams. And Miami, I don't want to overstate Heat culture, but like if there's a team that I'm going to be confident in post All-Star break, getting ramped up and revved up for the playoffs, who am I to count out the Miami Heat, who every single season somehow managed to overachieve with a coach like Eric Spoelstra? That's the real
last year.
Yeah, but that's the component that I don't.
Before that.
That's the component that I don't. All right, man, stop poking holes in my argument here. Let me be a little optimistic here.
The last 2 years when they've gotten dog walked in the first round. Sure, outside of that,
I do think it's different. I think they're just better than the last 2 years. Where if there is a team that I am going to buy stock in heading into the home stretch of the season, it's going to be the Miami Heat and Eric Spoelstra. Where over these last 9 games, they're 7-2 since Tyler Hero came back. They're number 2 in offensive rating. They're number 8 in defensive rating. I agree it's not against the elite competition, but it's an Eric Spoelstra argument where I think if there's going to be a guy that I bank on getting the most out of his offense and defense, it's going to be him. And then again, when I look at Detroit's shortcomings, there are more guys that I believe in putting the ball on the floor and going and doing their things. Like Miami just routinely gets the most out of their role players, and I don't want to undersell Tyler Hero, man. Tyler Hero makes a real difference in this team, and I think what they can do offensively night to night in these playoffs. He was just named Eastern Conference Player of the Week. I think he's grown a little bit as a pick-and-roll creator and playmaker over the past few seasons. He's a legitimate 3 to 4 level scorer now, and him and Bam together, I think he makes Bam better. Bam looks more confident. I think he enhances him as a scorer. I really like Miami's rotation top to bottom, and if there's a sneaky, cheeky Eastern Conference team that I'm going to buy in on right now before we get started on the playoffs, it's going to be Miami, and I could see them winning a playoff series or two, man. I really could, because of their roster in totality and Coach Spo.
I think I'm just not as high on them bringing back Hero as you are, because I do think although he improves this offense, their offense has actually still been below average this year when he's on the floor statistically. And then he provides a defensive entry point. Like Tyler Hero is a big defensive negative. And that's what I worry about. I think the Heat have a very good team defense, but where Detroit is so chock full of elite athletes and competitors and great size, there are dudes who can be attacked defensively for Miami.
Sure.
And Hero is absolutely one of those guys. And again, I just don't think the offense has actually been that good. And I don't think they've done against top competition what Detroit has been able to do, where their defense can really make teams uncomfortable. Miami has a lot of mediocre results. I mean, they've mostly gotten kind of waxed by the best teams in the league. I think they're 8-12 against like the top 9 teams in net rating, which is the 8 teams I consider real contenders, and then the Rockets are still in that group.
I don't think the team offense number is going to do Hero justice just because I think he was injured earlier in the year. I mean, and maybe I'm overreacting just to this recent really good stretch from Miami and Hero individually, but I think he's healthy now, and healthy Tyler Hero really does make a difference to me. And I mean, Bam is still one of the best defensive players on the planet. I think they have good defensive personnel around some of those guys. If it's Davion Mitchell, if it's Andrew Wiggins when he's back fully healthy. I like Khalil Ware and Bam in tandem on the block. I just think, again, I don't disagree with you. I think Detroit's got much better overall defensive personnel, but I think Miami laps them in terms of actually impactful offensive guys night to night.
I just don't agree in terms of it actually leading to a better team offense. They haven't been a better team offense this year. They haven't been a better team offense when Hero is on the floor. In fact, it's not even close, the difference between like their offense when Hero is on the floor compared to Detroit's when Cade is on the floor. And Detroit has still won the non-Cade minutes by a fair bit because their defense is that good. I understand it's been a good little stretch for Miami. I would need to see way more to have them above Detroit. Again, I think you can make an argument for them in the 9-10 spots because that's kind of open season, but I'm still just not that high on the roster or the two-way ceiling with this team. I have concerns about their key offensive players, like genuinely all of them, I think have major playoff concerns. All of them, last time we saw them in a playoff environment, Hero, Bam Adebayo, Norman Powell, albeit on a different team, like all had real offensive struggles. And there's just enough flaws and enough holes that you can poke in this team on that side of the ball. And then again, defensively, I think they're very good, but they're not Detroit level. I'm not as high on Miami as you are, but we'll see, man. We'll see if they can still whip out the Spo magic. I just think the last couple years have showed us that talent does matter a lot. And a player who can really grab hold of a game offensively in the half court means a lot. And that's what Jimmy could do for them a few years ago. And that's what Cade can do for Detroit now, even if I have my concerns about him up against the best. I mean, he's still obviously leaps and bounds above any player for Miami. In my 9th spot, I have the Rockets. You left them off. I can see that. They've really been struggling in the new year. Since January 1st, they're 21st in offensive rating. They're 15th in net rating. They are the number 21 half-court offense overall this year, and that's where all the concerns are. We've said it a million times, but the lack of ball handling and shooting, the loss of Steven Adams, who was so impactful for them on the offensive glass and on the defensive side of the ball, and now Şengün just really struggling on both sides of the ball for an extended stretch now, where defensively he's having a bad year, especially like in 2026 specifically. And then offensively, since January 1st, he's 18 points per game on under 54% true shooting and is still just not somebody who I believe can get himself to a high percentage shot consistently enough for this offense to be decent to good in the half court. And you talk about still concerns about teams being able to scheme around Amen being a complete non-shooter and the overall lack of spot-up shooting for this team. I still have them in my 9 spot. Just because they are still very good defensively. Not as good as I thought, but there's a lot of talent and athleticism there, although Şengün does concern me on that side of the ball. But still, you know they're going to be a pretty damn good team defense overall. And then offensively, they do still have the elite offensive rebounding aspect. They do still have the fact that Kevin Durant can kind of cut through any playoff series and get himself an efficient 25 a game. And there's just still enough talent there for me to have them in my top 10. Like, this team is still 6th in net rating overall on the year. That being said, do I think they are that good? No. I think they would have to reach another level defensively. which I can't see them doing with how Şengün has been playing on that side of the ball. And then I do think their half-court offense is going to fall apart against really good playoff defenses. But there is still an athleticism, a talent, a physicality here that I like enough with Houston to keep them in my top 10. I don't really have a problem with you dropping them out, though. Like, I think they are firmly on the line of cannot win the NBA title.
Yeah, that's exactly where I got them. Like I said, I mean, if Steven Adams was healthy, I legitimately, I would have them maybe even higher than this. I don't know, close to, somewhere in this, I think, 8-6 range.
Yeah, he's a really painful loss. They were a plus 13 net team in his minutes. They're a plus 5 net team without him. Like, it's a really big difference, especially on the defensive end. But even offensively, again, they're still a great offensive rebounding team, but they were historic with Adams. So definitely both a fair bit lower on them than we were early in the year, coming into the year. So let's get on to the 7 spot then. Who do you have there, Logan?
I've been moved, and I've been skeptical of this team for as long as I can remember. I got the New York Knicks here in this spot, and I'm just impressed, man. I've just seen it long enough with New York, especially defensively, and really how connected this team plays some games. Now, the Knicks are still a little bit inconsistent, frustratingly inconsistent some nights. If it's Brunson leaving them short, if it's their shooting leaving them short, if it's Cat. The Knicks rarely ever seem to put it all together in a single game. That being said, I do like Mike Brown. This team seems more connected than they were with a guy like Tom Thibodeau. I like the player movement offensively with the Knicks. It's nowhere near as stagnant as it was with a guy like Tibbs. And then defensively, this team just plays hard. Also on top of that, I think it's a much better bench than the Knicks have had in recent memory, right? If it's Alvarado, if it's Diawara, Hart, Robinson, I just think they have guys that they can turn to in a way where, you know, last season it was DeLon Wright and Landry Shamet. And I like Shamet, but like, you know, they're waving the white flag. They're basically saying, you know, somebody please save us. I like the Knicks a lot more in those areas. I still have my concerns about Brunson and Cat defensively being relentlessly attacked in actions, but all of those areas that I mentioned, I like the Knicks more this season than I did last. And so, and even up against a team like Detroit, it's interesting. I still might take Detroit head-to-head against the Knicks.
Right.
Because of a matchup thing. But I think the Knicks battle up against the best of the best better than Detroit because of their offensive ceiling. And so I've got a little bit of a push-pull dynamic going on there with Detroit, but I just know what's going to get. I think the Knicks have a higher two-way ceiling than Detroit, where Detroit just leaves me wanting a lot more offensively. Offense comes a lot easier to the Knicks and Detroit, and that's why I went with them here in my 7 spot.
It definitely does, and I think you hit on a good point with like the specifics of the Detroit versus New York matchup, because I was thinking about that. Like, fundamentally, Cade has just played way better against the Knicks than Brunson has against the Pistons. Brunson has really struggled in that matchup, and the Pistons have maybe the best Brunson defender on the planet in Asar Thompson. Like, they defend him really, really well. So if it came to that matchup, maybe give me Detroit. However, when I think about the upside to beat the best of the best with what New York has been doing defensively as of late and with what their offensive ceiling is, I do think they have a better formula ultimately when it comes to just like reaching the peak level that they're capable of, because the Pistons offense just is what it is. The Knicks defense has been better in this recent stretch than I ever thought it could be with their personnel coming into the year. I still worry about it, like you said. I think even last year we saw them put together good stretches of regular season defense, and then you get to the playoffs against elite offenses with elite process, and they are going to attack Brunson and Cat, and they are going to make them work, and they are going to make it really hard to hide those guys, and that was really problematic for the Knicks defensively in the playoffs last year. But they just have more depth, like Diawara, as you mentioned, Jose Alvarado coming in and really just like bringing his sort of psychotic, dogged competitiveness. And I like Landry Shamet as somebody who competes defensively, can make shots. Like, the defense has improved. The depth has improved. Those were two of the biggest concerns about the Knicks last year, that they were 6 deep basically with guys who you actually thought were solid. And then they had 2 major defensive red flags on the floor. Now they have more ways to work around those things. Those concerns have been alleviated. But like you said, just like putting it all together, I'm not talking about in a specific game, because they've had a couple of great individual game performances, what they did against the Spurs, what they did against the Nuggets. But for an extended stretch. Like, since January 1st, their defense has been far and away better than it had been at any previous point in the Cat Brunson iteration of this team. And then their offense is going through like its worst stretch, where they're 11th in offensive rating since January 1st. And Brunson is giving you 23 points per game on 56% true shooting. And he has really struggled against some of these like super athletic perimeter defenses. OKC, Detroit, he's had a really rough time against Cleveland. That does worry me when you talk about some of these high leverage matchups, because there's so much on Brunson's plate. I mean, their formula for playoff offense since he got there has been, man, you need to carry a crazy load as a creator and as a shot maker and as a volume scorer. And he's just struggled in some of those really important matchups. And I worry about the defense overall. So I guess those are the reasons that I didn't really consider the Knicks higher than this. But I do think, like, if you get the best version of Brunson and you get a good Cat series, and this team is in a defensive matchup where Cat and Brunson aren't really exploited to their utmost potential, and then you have OG doing all of his great work, and this team can really beat you on the margins. They can be a really good offensive rebounding team. Mitch can swing games there. Josh Hart is a very good offensive rebounding wing. They have an ability to keep turnovers relatively low, which you credit Brunson with. They haven't been as great there as they were last year, for example, but like they do still create some margin there. They've got more three-point volume as a team than last year. There's a lot that this team does well. They're a good basketball team. Ultimately, though, when I look at the two-way ceilings of the teams higher than them, I just see higher heights. I see teams that I have less concerns about defensively. I see teams that have more offensive weaponry, to whom offense comes easier. I do still worry about Cat in a tight playoff environment against very physical, very good defenses. I think at times as a driver, he can struggle in those sort of environments, and his shooting, his offense just hasn't been quite the same this year. I don't know. The Knicks have had a couple of really good wins recently, and then they've also still had some losses. They lost to the Clippers last night. They lost to the Lakers just before that. Like, they haven't really put it all together in a way that has moved me, but the defense having this stretch has moved me enough to put them back above Detroit, whereas I had previously flipped on that because I thought the particulars of the matchup favored Detroit so much. Now I like the Knicks a little bit more up against the other top dogs, I think. Still very close. They're like in a tier of their own, honestly, in like the 7 and 8 spots for me, New York and Detroit.
Yeah, it's a good take. And this is where I would say we're actually getting into the championship kind of real contender hierarchy here. I cannot believe I am doing this, but in my 6th spot, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. I am waving the white flag on Boston. I just can't deny it anymore.
Come on, baby.
I wanted to put Cleveland as my favorite in the East, but after this Cavs-Celtics game, which we thought was going to be the big fish coming into this show, that Jared Allen didn't play in that game, but my hang-up with them against Boston is I just don't think Cleveland has enough defensive personnel on the perimeter to contain Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum, to be quite frank with you. Like, obviously they have two guys, right? Evan Mobley can match up on Jayson Tatum and limit him enough. Theoretically, Jalen Tyson, can go on Jaylen Brown, vice versa. I don't think they have enough of these guys down the roster where 48 minutes, and those guys, they're not going to play every minute, but say 40 minutes of defending those guys. Or when you get switches, I just see Cleveland having too limited of personnel, right? If it's, I'm thinking about these bench guys that they're going to play and that these guys could potentially get switches on. Keon Ellis is not going to be able to contain these guys. I love Keon Ellis. It's not the right archetype. They're too big and strong for him. Dennis Schroeder, too big and strong for him. James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, too big and strong. Like, I just think Tatum and Brown are going to have their way with whatever switches that they can get on these guys, or pulling them into the actions, or, getting these matchups in transition. I just don't think they have enough of the kind of perimeter defenders that you need to have to really limit them in a playoff series where Cleveland's going to be forced to send doubles, and that's going to create advantages for these guys. And that's my hang-up. I still see it with Cleveland. I can't act like I don't. Donovan Mitchell is one of the best scorers on planet Earth. Evan Mobley against unathletic front courts can still get his. Jared Allen has really been maximized with James Harden. And so it's not really an anti-Cleveland thing. Like, I think Cleveland has the talent and has a damn good bench. It really is specifically in the personnel department in this Boston Celtics matchup where I'm in my head mentally playing out a 7-game series against these teams, and I just don't think Cleveland has the defensive personnel to match up against Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. I think it is too physically overwhelming and overpowering for me to expect Cleveland to be able to match that kind of physicality and length and strength. And Boston is so complete. They are so methodical. They are so disciplined every possession.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you called it with the Tatum fit, man. I know we've only seen a couple of games from Tatum. And there are a few possessions where I was like, it's not going to be perfect. There's a few possessions where I'm like, Tatum, why are you taking that pull-up three? But for the most part, Tatum is coming in here, and he is taking on high-level perimeter opposition, and he's matching up with them well. He is ending possessions defensively. He is making the right read and the right play to his teammates when they have their spots. Like, Boston's complete, and they have so many more of those guys. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but like the Jordan Walshes of the world and the Hugo Gonzalez, and like they have these big, feisty wings in tandem with these really good offensive players as well at the guard spots. Cleveland is sorely lacking 1 to 2 more of those kind of big physical wings that I think would swing the tide of that series in their favor. And I'm not writing Cleveland off. I want to be clear about that. This is way more of a pro-Boston take than it is an anti-Cleveland take.
Logan, what you're saying is
I'm
pretty much
pissed.
exactly
I'm
what I
pissed,
said
man.
when
I
we had
wanted
this
to come in here
conversation
and I wanted to
week.
say I'm back in Cleveland. Jared Allen's going to make the difference, and I have to be genuine on this show. The only time I've ever trolled was my Kevin Durant take. I can't come in here.
You've never trolled DeMontis Sabonis or James Harden in your life?
I have for sure.
Yeah.
I just thought coming into this episode, I wasn't going to be genuine if I made a Cleveland take, because every time I wrote down my bullet points for my argument in pro-Cleveland, my brain wouldn't let me. And so I would just be lying on the beat if I said Cleveland was above Boston at this point in the stage for me.
And you could never lie on the beat, bro. All you do is spit truth and heat when they let you on the mic, and a lot of slurs, which personally I'm not so fond of. But other than that, very gifted lyricist. I feel like you basically just said what I said last week when we were having this hypothetical discussion. Like, my main point was I just feel like Boston has better perimeter personnel to match up with Cleveland's than vice versa. And ultimately, Boston has more depth in terms of their quality perimeter defenders, and they have more depth in terms of their sources of perimeter offense. It's not just the number of guys that they can throw at Harden and Mitchell. It's also the fact that with Boston, not only do you have to deal with Tatum and Brown, which Cleveland is not particularly well equipped to do, there's also the Peyton Pritchard of it all and the Derek White of it all. And the fact that all of these lineups they put out there are so well balanced with really good ball handling guards and big mismatch attacking forwards and tons of shooting all around and guys who do the dirty work on both sides of the floor. Like, there's just so much to love about this Boston team. I do think it's a particularly tough matchup, though, for the reason that you laid out there. Like, if there's one thing that Cleveland's roster is missing, because we've talked about, they check so many boxes. They have 2 damn good perimeter creators. They have elite spot-up shooting, which, by the way, did not come through in that Boston game. So if you're going to hold out hope, it's going to be, hey, if Cleveland just shoots better, they would have been more right in that game, and they had a down shooting game, and guys who normally make shots didn't in that one. And they've got the good play finishing bigs, and they've got really good rim protection defensively, and they have added some defensive-minded perimeter players, right? The emergence of Jalen Tyson and bringing in Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis. Like, they check a lot of boxes. The one thing they're really missing is big wings. Like, their roster kind of goes guards, guards, guards. Jalen Tyson is 6'6" and stout. He's still not a big wing. And then it's like Dean Wade is kind of the only big wing. And then you go straight to, like, the actual big men. And I just think against Boston, that's not good. And I think Tyson is a very good archetype to guard like a Jaylen Brown, but you only have one of him. And then it made sense that they went with a lot of Dean Wade in this game because he is like generally a pretty good kind of defender in these sorts of matchups, but he really wasn't very effective on those guys. And so just consistently over the last 2 years, Tatum and Brown and Boston have looked comfortable against Cleveland. They just have. They've really liked that matchup, and I thought maybe getting Garland off the floor for Cleveland because he was just food in that matchup, and bringing in a Tyson would make things a little bit different for them, even though I've been on the Boston side of this debate, and it just definitely didn't make enough of a difference. And then I also felt like the Cleveland guards weren't really able to get a lot going in this game. I thought they did a really good job on Harden specifically, so I just feel like with Boston, there is even a little bit more balance, and there is even a little bit more variety in terms of the creation, in terms of the defensive versatility. It's possible that we see down the line, Jared Allen goes back out there, and so they're able to deploy Mobley more so as like a Tatum defender, as a Tatum matchup. But I don't know. I try to think about like the best configured lineups to guard this Boston team, and I don't really see how they can do it without compromising their offense. Because like, you want to get Keon Ellis out there to deal with the shifty guards, or Schroeder. You want to get like Tyson Wade and Mobley out there, but you have to have Jared Allen out there too. You want Allen and Mobley out there together because you want Allen to be able to anchor the defense at the 5 and Mobley to be able to take on more of the Tatum matchup. But then you also want like as many dudes who can defend wings as possible out there, which maybe inclines you to go Mobley at the 5 and you switch a lot. Like, I don't know. I just can't really find the right combination that I think is actually going to be very effective against Boston. And I don't want to make it all about this matchup because it's not. I ultimately just think like Cleveland is very reliant on 2 perimeter players for their offense. And defensively, those 2 perimeter players mean that like they're just not going to be able to put out strong point of attack defenses, which means they're very reliant specifically on their rim protection, whereas Boston has the ability to mix and match defensive personnel and coverages more completely. All the while it's like, yeah, Pritchard, he can explode. Derek White, he can explode. And Boston has all of the shooting around their creators that Cleveland does. They have all the same play finishing with more sources of offense. And I think they're better coached. And I think they're more consistent on the margins and in terms of the effort and the execution of the game. I just like Boston more. I don't think that it's like Cleveland can't beat them, because it's possible you get down Tatum and Brown series and Harden and Mitchell go crazy. But again, when I think about like the particulars of the matchups, I just don't see why anyone would expect it to go that way based on what we've seen up to this point.
I think it would be Harden and Mitchell killing the bigs in drop. But again, that you're trusting them to create consistent dribble penetration against a stout defense. I think it would be Mobley and Allen really getting it going against the bigs too. I mean, that's where I look at the weak point for Boston, but
yeah,
I don't love it. And I also don't, and I don't mean to rag on Cleveland, I also don't love banking on James Harden in a playoff series at this stage as well in this matchup.
Right, in this matchup when it's a lot of Derek White and it's a lot of Jaylen Brown, it's a tough matchup. So I agree with you there. And once again, I just think Boston has enough ways to make Cleveland's guards uncomfortable. It's like, okay, let's say that you are comfortable against our bigs and drop. Well, now we're going to put Tatum on Jared Allen and we're going to have him switch everything. And we know that he can guard these guys on the perimeter. Is Jared Allen or is Evan Mobley, are they going to actually be able to punish us for putting wings on them? Are they going to be able to do that? Are they going to be able to, again, beat a Derek White or a Jaylen Brown consistently on the post and on the glass? Like, if there's a criticism of Allen and Mobley, it's that they don't do that. It's that they don't have that ability to beat you out of the post. They don't have that ability to physically impose themselves on the game and take over the glass. You know, Allen can do that sometimes, and then sometimes he's just not engaged in the game in that way. I just have fewer questions about Boston. Even though Tatum is the guy coming back, he should be kind of the unknown in this. I just feel better about their ability to translate regardless of matchup, and specifically in this matchup. So I have Cleveland in my 5 spot. I still like them a lot because I think they can be a really good defense. I think they are an elite offense. Mobley has been looking really good offensively. I feel good about that. I really like James Harden's fit in this offense. Max Strus at some point coming back is another really good offensive weapon here. Merrill and Tyson have been elite spot-up shooters. I really like Schroeder and Ellis coming in here. Like, I want to be clear, I'm very high on Cleveland. I'm just higher on Boston. But I do still think Cleveland checks a lot of boxes for me on both sides of the ball. I have them narrowly above Minnesota in my 6th spot. These teams are neck and neck, and honestly, 2 through 6 is pretty close for me. Like, we had this conversation with Jason a couple weeks ago where I had Minnesota just on the outside looking in, and I don't think that that's right. I think they're right here with this group. If you wanted to have them as your number 2 contender, like, I would hear that case. There's a combination of power, strength with shooting that they have, with what Rudy Gobert can do anchoring this defense, with a couple of real high-level bench weapons now. bringing in Ayo Dosunmu, obviously already having Naz Reid. Just the role player value you get from like DiVincenzo and McDaniels and the combinations of defense and shooting that they bring. And then obviously Ant's ability to take over certain series as a scorer, and Julius Randle being like this big mismatch attacking forward who can give you trouble. Ultimately, I do still have more questions about the Timberwolves. I do still think their point of attack defense is not what it was last year with Nickeil Walker gone. I think they felt that absence. I think they've really struggled to defend in the non-Gobert minutes, and that does concern me. And then I do still question, okay, how precise is Ant going to be as a decision maker over the course of a playoff series, when I think he can at times struggle with diagnosing coverages immediately and at times can maybe be a little bit score first, but not really having the layers as a scorer, the intermediate game, to be super effective against coverages that are really loaded up on him. Worrying about Julius Randle. As I've said, I think the OKC matchup is just really bad for Minnesota because Julius Randle falls apart. And if he's cold as a jump shooter, if he's not in a matchup where he can really play that bully ball, like OKC takes away that element of his game and he pretty much just turns into a total pumpkin. Those are the reasons I'm not quite as high on Minnesota, but I also see the ability for them to beat anybody above them other than Oklahoma City. There is a thing with this team where like every once in a while they'll just totally get their ass kicked by like a decent team. Like we just saw it against Orlando. We saw it against Philly within the last couple weeks. That doesn't really concern me that much. I don't think that's a playoff issue, and I do think the strength, the physicality, the shooting, it all translates well to the playoffs, and I can definitely see this team making a Western Conference Finals run. But ultimately, there are teams that I think can be more elite offensively. There are teams that I think can be more elite defensively. I think Minnesota is a very good two-way team, but still imperfect and still with some questions that hold me up just a little bit.
I've got Minnesota in my 3 spot.
Okay.
I agree with you completely on the OKC matchup. Minnesota would be number 2 if I was confident that they could go toe-to-toe with OKC. But I would favor Minnesota, and this is where it just gets so wonky, where I'm just I'm not done with Denver, but I would take Minnesota head-to-head versus Denver. I don't think Denver can beat OKC. I know we've had this conversation. It's almost like a rock, paper, scissors kind of deal with all these teams that are behind OKC. I like Minnesota a lot. I think Anthony Edwards is a problem come playoff times. I agree with you on the margins, like the playmaking thing. I just think he is at such a high scoring level right now that he is just going to be a problem to deal with in any matchup. Rudy Gobert is going to anchor this defense at such a high level. Jaden McDaniels is reliable. Like, I really do like a lot of what Minnesota does, and I think they would have a real chance to be my number 2 team if I thought that Ant and Randle could get through the OKC defense. I just don't think they can. I think that Ant is going to struggle in that matchup against a lot of high-level perimeter defenders, Kaysen, Lou, Caruso. Like, Randle is going to struggle in that matchup mightily, whoever they put on him. But I feel the same way about Denver. I don't really think Denver can go toe-to-toe with OKC in that way either. I think my big take is, I've got Denver in my 4 spot just because of those matchup concerns. I like Denver a lot, but I favor Minnesota head-to-head against Denver. I favor OKC against Denver. San Antonio is like a coin toss to me against Denver. I think Denver's defense is a really, really big hang-up for me in why they're not higher. Whereas when I look at like Minnesota and San Antonio, it's not.
I think there's still a difference between how Denver plays OKC and how Minnesota does. Like, Minnesota really got manhandled by OKC in that playoff series last year. And I think even though Minnesota clearly has the better defensive personnel than Denver, they don't guard Shai as well as Denver does. Like, just in terms of scheme, they're not nearly as smart about how they guard him, and so Shai pretty much fries them. And then on the other side of the ball, like, I tweeted out these numbers a bit ago, but Julius Randle is so horrific, so consistently against OKC. He can't comfortably put the ball on the floor against them. He can't post up against like just their insane feist that they have. They force him into so many turnovers. If they double, they speed up and force him into mistakes. Like, he just melts down in that series. So even though I have gotten lower and lower on how realistic the possibility is that Denver actually can beat OKC in a 7-game series. I think it's quite unlikely at this point. I still think it is definitely a fair bit more likely than Minnesota doing it. I just think we've seen that matchup play out so many convincingly, and there is still a factor with Denver of like Aaron Gordon getting back and being fully healthy and what a game changer he is, and getting Peyton Watson back with him being a revelation this year, and THJ's ability to swing games. Like, I still think the offensive level that Denver can reach is different from what Minnesota can do. And when Denver has defended OKC better than Minnesota, honestly, I just like the more in that matchup still by a fair bit.
I don't disagree with that, but would you take Denver head-to-head against Minnesota?
Probably a toss-up at this point. I don't know.
I think
they really struggle with Ant. Ant consistently kind of shreds Denver. But I don't want to be too low on Denver, even though they've been in this lull. And even though I think, again, OKC has beaten them straight up 3 times, done it while shorthanded. They're just in a different tier. I still think the fact that we have seen Denver at full strength so rarely this year doesn't get talked about enough. They have been hit with a laundry list of injuries. And if you're going to tell me, all right, are you banking on the Murray, Jokic, Gordon 3-man game with the best depth that they've had? Like, I do still think I would pick that over a Minnesota. And at least, certainly in terms of their ability to threaten OKC. And if it came to a head-to-head matchup, I would say it's a toss-up. And the tiebreaker would be, I think Denver has a better chance to beat OKC than Minnesota does.
Oh, and that's where I'm struggling with this. I agree with you. I think Denver definitely has a better chance to beat OKC, but I think I would take Minnesota in the head-to-head matchup against Denver. So I couldn't put. It's tough. That's the thing that I'm struggling to balance with here, and that's where I landed. Is I would lean Minnesota head-to-head against Denver.
I get that. Denver's struggle is they just don't really have great personnel to throw at like some of these elite guards.
Yeah.
Shai, obviously. Ant, like, they didn't have Peyton Watson or Aaron Gordon when they played against Minnesota most recently. And so those are 2 guys who would take on that matchup a fair bit. But I still don't think either one of them are great options. I think that we've seen that. So it is tricky on that front. But I do think the Denver offense against everybody other than OKC is pretty nuts. Now, Minnesota also guards them quite well. I mean, Gobert is very impactful in that matchup, and I think they know the strategy they want to deploy to. So I'm fine with that take. Really, I don't think Denver has done anything to say, hey, we belong above the rest of the pack. Like, they have played some very underwhelming basketball as of late. But then I do think about the stats of them having, like, whatever, a plus 22 net rating when Jokic and Gordon play together this year. And it's just been such a small sample size that it's like, I do still think there's a very high ceiling with that team where the offense just goes berserk. I just can't see it against OKC at this point because OKC has just clearly executed their formula at such a high level. Against everybody else, I'm really, really, really not ready to write Denver off whatsoever. So I have them a little bit higher. Who is in your 5 spot then, Logan, right? Because you jumped right from 6 to 4?
Yeah, so I've got the Celtics in my 5 spot.
Ooh, why not higher?
I like everybody out west more.
Okay.
I mean, Boston's definitely my favorite in the East. I just think against any of these teams, I guess they could take on... I could see them beating Minnesota just because I think they have the defensive personnel to limit Ant a little bit. That's a tough matchup. I would take everybody else out west, though. Everything is so matchup dependent, man. I could definitely see Boston winning the title. No doubt. Yeah. I think they are a great basketball team, and I think the ceiling that they have with a fully healthy Jayson Tatum is terrifying. I mean, and that's something that I want to hammer home. I know you've been hammering home on our show this all season long, but the fact that they have been so great without Tatum, and because Tatum's skill set is so plug and play,
yeah,
that's just what you keep coming back to with this Celtics team and why you should be really confident. And I've seen a lot of fans that maybe haven't been tapped in going, criticizing, why is Boston ranked so high? The record doesn't reflect this. I mean, they're a machine. They're so well coached. They have such a good identity. They execute so well on both sides of the floor. And they have a top 10 basketball player returning potentially for the playoffs. Like, I don't have any issue with you having Boston higher. I just think I would take any of the 4 teams that I have in the West higher than them to win the finals in a head-to-head matchup. But I couldn't put it past Boston winning the title, certainly.
I'm extremely high on Boston. They had the second best net rating and the 4th best record in the NBA before Jayson Tatum set foot on the court. And I think his superpower being versatility is so great for this team because obviously they don't need a boost in terms of their offensive rating, their net rating. They're already elite in those categories. What they need is somebody who's going to give them more options, give them more versatility. Because when it comes to high-stakes matchups, that's what matters so much, right? The ability to have variety, the ability to have multiple schemes and multiple sources of offense you can turn to if somebody is struggling or if it's a bad matchup for somebody for any particular reason. That's where I look at Boston. I'm just like, in terms of balance, in terms of answers on both sides of the ball, I think they're the second best team in the NBA. Like, I look at them compared to the questions I have about Denver's defense and the questions I have about San Antonio's offense. And I'm like, this Boston team is loaded with good perimeter and wing defenders. And they have a very good rim protector in Neemias Queta, who in sort of his base drop look can be very effective. Then they have a bunch of buttons that they can push defensively, like we talked about, putting Tatum on 5s and switching everything. And like, again, they just have so much personnel and such good depth that they can really tinker defensively and I think put out some groups that can perform regardless of matchup, and they can be an elite level defense. And then offensively, they're already second in offensive rating. They're already a top 3 shooting team in the NBA. They're already rich with pick and roll creation, and they have a more layered offense with more player movement. And guys like Peyton Pritchard has been such an effective creator this year. He is such an offensive weapon. Derek White swings so many games on both sides of the ball, but purely talking offensively, he's somebody you can entrust with like a big ball handling load. And honestly, I think is due to get hot as a shooter. So I think we'll see Derek White's best basketball of the year later. That's my take. He might peak in the playoffs, and the guy's already so damn good. So they have this elite pick and roll offense, and then they do have the ability to go to the Tatum Brown mismatch attacking with so much shooting around them. And Tatum is such a good passer, such a good playmaker. You've already seen his ability there. And again, he also has the ability to just slot into Boston's new kind of base offense, this more pick and roll centric offense where he can play off ball and he's an elite catch and shooter, and he can come in and be used as a screener and play off of these guys really well. I just look at the balance and the firepower and the depth and the coaching and what they create on the margins every single game with the elite offensive rebounding and never turning the ball over. And then the layers that Tatum adds to this team on both sides of the ball. And I just think I like them more than Denver, than San Antonio, than anybody, honestly. I think Boston is an extremely complete team. I think they are about to be a wagon. And again, to beat OKC, I think they would need 100% superstar Jayson Tatum. I think they would need a great Peyton Pritchard series, which would be a big swing factor in that matchup because he is unique in terms of his isolation scoring ability as a small guard, right? He's not somebody who's super reliant on screens for his offense. At the same time, super elite athletic physical defenses can give him trouble. He was like unplayable against OKC last year, and he's gotten better since then, but is he somebody who is a valuable source of offense for them against OKC, or is he somebody who really struggles? That's a big swing factor. Jaylen Brown has played horribly against OKC. They like totally attack his handle, and he can't post up there, guys. He can't attack mismatches. Like, ultimately, even though I think Boston has a really good team defense, and even though I think they have a lot of shooting and multiple sources of creation offensively, still hard for me to see them beating OKC, but it's hard for me to see anybody beating OKC. And if you just say, all right, baseline matchup, who has the second best overall basketball team? I think it's the Boston Celtics. And I say that even if Tatum is 80%, I still think it's the Boston Celtics because he still makes this team meaningfully better in subtle ways on both sides of the ball when that's all they needed to become a top-tier kind of title contender.
It's bold. I don't know. I'm thinking about them hypothetically in these matchups that aren't against OKC. I think that everybody above them just has a... And I get what you're saying about their team top to bottom because Boston's rock solid, man. They've got so many contributors and so many different archetypes of players that they can turn to, and that's what I think is really awesome about Boston, right? You're talking about Queta being their rim protector, Big Vooch being their play finisher down on the block, right? They've got shooting if you need it. They've got guys who are slanted defensively. And, I mean, that's a real thing that I would emphasize to anybody watching basketball nowadays. That is maybe more valuable in today's NBA than anything else, is having different looks
matchup
and different
versatility,
different buttons that you can push against different teams. and Boston has that versatility to the max. I believe in the number one for every other team above them a little bit more. But as I'm saying that, I don't really know how much that matters.
Yeah. I mean, again, dude, they're second in offensive rating. Now they're fifth in defensive rating. And Jayson Tatum has played 2 games for this basketball team. There are so many guys on this roster who it is so easy to see swinging games, swinging series, and then they do have the elite top-end talent too. Like, you can say, okay, you trust whatever, the number one more than a Jayson Tatum. But what about the totality of Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Derek White and Peyton Pritchard as your top 4 with really good depth and lots of shooting and lots of team defense and great coaching? Like, I don't know. I just think Jayson Tatum being a Swiss Army knife kind of gives this team Swiss Army knife options. I just feel like there's so many different ways they can match up. There's so many different ways they can beat you. And again, every lineup is going to be chock full of ball handling, shooting, have a big mismatch attacking forward, going to be able to defend, and they're going to have options. And I look at San Antonio and I'm like, I can see your Achilles heel. I can see what is probably going to be the thing that lets you down. And it is the inconsistency of your perimeter shooting. I also worry about Wemby dealing with elite playoff physicality and teams swarming him a lot. Like, I just have some real questions about that offense. I look at Denver and I'm like, okay, what's up with the defense? Like, what is your ceiling on that side of the ball? It feels like as much as they can scheme in a playoff setting, they're destined to be a pretty average defense. And then I look at Boston and I'm like, offensively, they can go toe-to-toe with anybody, clearly. And defensively, they can be really damn good. So when it comes to balance, two-way ceiling, like, just give me Boston over everybody other than OKC. That's my take. I'm very high on them. I've been very high on them. I think it's going to pay off. I think the stock is going to pay off. Much like Geno plushies.
I like it.
Okay.
We'll see.
So I will just sort of quickly run through. I have the Spurs in my number 4 spot. I think their defense is absolutely dominant. I think their calling card as a contender is they have shown they have the best formula to beat OKC, because whereas Denver's number 1 offense hasn't been able to look like that against OKC's defense, the Spurs defense has legitimately been able to disrupt OKC's offense. Even that, I think there is context. Like, OKC was in a bit of a shooting lull for some of those matchups and didn't have A.J. Mitchell in, I think, 2 of those games, which does matter because he's such a game-changing offensive player for them as another ball handler alongside Shai. Nevertheless, I mean, just Wemby is so dominant defensively. They have such good point of attack defenders. It's a really tough matchup for OKC. Outside of that, I think I would ultimately prefer to bank on the elite Denver offense just because I don't know what I'm getting out of Castle and Harper in a playoff run. I don't know what I'm getting out of Wemby offensively in a playoff run. I can worry a bit about the Spurs shooting overall. And I do feel like against anyone other than OKC, like the Murray-Jokic offensive 2-man game is really as good as it gets. And they have more shooting around them now. And Aaron Gordon is such a good versatile player for them. And they have a better ability to contend and stay even in the non-Jokic minutes. Like, I think the Spurs are clearly the better regular season team than the Nuggets. I don't even think it's a conversation. If you ask me, who do I trust more in terms of a deep playoff run? It would be Denver. But I also acknowledge that, like, San Antonio has this A++ athletic defensive punch that they can throw at teams. I just don't see the offense holding up quite as well. But look, this team has been absolutely dominant. They're 47-17. They've got the second best record in the NBA. Like, I give them all the credit for that. I just see a flaw, a concern with them that worries me more than anything. Certainly with Boston, who I really think you'd be hard-pressed to poke a hole in as a team. And then with Denver as well. I think if I had to pick who do I want to bank on, Denver's offense or San Antonio's defense overall, I would still bank on Denver's offense.
So I've got the Spurs in my 2 spot.
It's valid.
And I hear what you're saying about the offense. That's the thing that worries me too. What defense is it going to try to do with Wemby if that's put a smaller wing that can really bother his dribble on him, a really physical guy that can keep him from weaponizing his physical
traits?
They're going
to double the shit out of him, that's for sure.
That too, and yeah, test his playmaking. The shooting for San Antonio certainly worries me, and how that varies on a game-to-game basis, and their lack of reliable guys. Devin Vassell's awesome, so is Champagnie, Harrison Barnes, but beyond that, our team's going to test those other shooters. When I also think about San Antonio, they have one of the game's great neutralizers on defense in Victor Wembanyama, and I just think any opposing offense is really going to struggle with that game in, game out. And I think it's going to balance the playing field. When also you're talking about this athletic defense. That's what I love about them having, and I was critical about this earlier in the year about the potential redundancies, but having Fox, Castle, and Harper, specifically Castle and Harper both, because there's so many of these guys, they can exert themselves on defensively every single possession, and they match up with any opposing guard that they're going to run into, and they just have dogs. If it's Keldon Johnson, if it's Champagnie, if it's Vassell, like those guys are going to play really hard. They've got great depth in a second unit that I really believe in. If it's them turning to a guy like Luke Cornett, the dribble penetration and the consistent offense that they can get from a guy like Harper off the bench, how they can stagger those looks in those minutes. And I said on the last show, I think the Spurs could win the title as soon as next season. I think they could win it, as soon as this year. To me, when I was making this list, like I said, I think it's a real rock, paper, scissors kind of deal where I could see Denver knocking off San Antonio. I could see maybe Minnesota knocking off San Antonio. Sure, I think San Antonio has the best punch to throw at OKC, and I think that we've seen it on tape, and that is what warrants them being in my number 2 spot. In every team, when I come back to it, sure, Denver could do it. Sure, Minnesota can do it. Every one of these teams in the Western Conference is going to have to deal with Wemby. And the question I keep coming back to with San Antonio, all of these concerns that Carson and I have brought up, if it's the shooting, if it's Wemby's offense, San Antonio's offense in general, is it just Wemby's turn to run the league? Is Victor Wembanyama just ready to run the NBA? And I can't count that hypothetical out of my brain where could this just be the run where he dominates? And he is, and I just want to say this aside from the top 10 contender talks that we're doing, Victor Wembanyama is the most perfect NBA superstar I have ever seen. And I just love the guy. I think he has got the perfect mentality. I love the energy that he has brought to this city. He is such an easy guy to root for. Yeah. There's no stains from him off the court. The guy wears his heart on his sleeve. He fucking cares, man.
He's the GOAT.
He is the GOAT. I just think it could be as soon as this year, and we could be looking up 2-3 months from now and going, holy shit. Wemby just said, nah, it's my time right now. I've got the Spurs in the finals. This is in shout out Jayson Tatum. This is an anomaly in basketball history where you look up and the Spurs are just here and ready to run the league now. Like I said, there's nothing that could poke a hole in the OKC resume, but I think in my heart of hearts, San Antonio throws the best punch at OKC, and I really do think it's a real possibility that the Spurs could just be ready to take that kind of leap and run the league now, and that's why they're number 2 for me.
Not only do I agree that they throw the best punch at OKC, also let's just not deny that they have the second best record and the third best net rating in the NBA, and by all these metrics have been a top 3 team this regular season. The Spurs have proven everything they can in the regular season pretty much. They haven't been great in the Minnesota matchup, and we've only seen the Denver matchup once. I'm excited to see that a couple more times down the stretch of this season, so we'll see how they fare against some of those top teams out west that we're talking about them in the same conversations with. But I do feel pretty clearly that when San Antonio's shot making is on, and I'm talking about that in terms of their catch and shoot guys like Champagnie and Harrison Barnes and Devin Vassell, these sort of important catch and shoot guys for them, but also, and even more so probably, Wemby and Fox, when they're in a mode where Wemby is just able to make shots over the top consistently, and Fox is able to consistently knock down his pull-up jumpers, this is clearly the second best team in the NBA because of what they do defensively. There's just no question about that. Again, that's just an inconsistency that holds me up just enough to still have the Spurs at 4. I considered them at 2. I certainly considered them at 3. Their resume this year is just better than Denver's. But again, the regular season and the playoffs are different. And it's not because of some amorphous experience factor. I do think experience matters. But what also matters is when you have a team like Denver that has guys who are so well built for the playoffs in terms of their offensive skill sets, like an Aaron Gordon, and a team that does now have a Tim Hardaway Jr. they can turn to for that bench scoring spark. And I just think there is a maturity there for sure, but also just the complementary nature of their offense. So damn good. And then I look at the Spurs and I just think it's easier to speed up and disturb a Wemby with the swarm at this point. We've seen some really good team defenses have some success doing that. And again, Castle, Harper, their perimeter shots being tested, it's a concern for me. I certainly don't want to make it sound like these are like big red flags to the point where I can't absolutely see the Spurs winning the title, because I can. I really
we
can.
have to.
They're
we have
so
to nitpick.
Damn good.
That's the point.
We have to nitpick, and it just came down to like a gut feeling of who do I trust more in a deep playoff run at this point. I do think I would bet on the Nuggets formula over the Spurs. That being said, specifically in the OKC matchup, I like the Spurs more than the Nuggets. Maybe that should be the most important thing, but when I'm ranking these teams, like more so just holistically, like how great are these teams as contenders? I felt Boston was the most balanced. I felt Denver's offense was the thing I trusted the next most, and their ability to scheme to be solid defensively in the playoffs, which we've seen, and in big matchups they can do that. And then San Antonio, hell of a defensive punch. Still a good offense. Like, let's not get that twisted. This team is 6th in offensive rating, but do I trust Fox, Wemby, Castle offensively enough this shooting? Just not at the level of comfort that I had with Boston and Denver. It was so close. That was the nuanced nitpick that I made that held them back. OKC at number 1, Logan. I think we've covered it, but this might be the best I've ever felt about OKC. I mean, they started the year 24-1, and I think I feel better about them now because Jared McCain is on this team now. Like, that really matters. And A.J. Mitchell has just kept doing what he does, and they've been almost invincible when he's on the court. Like, even against the Spurs, again, as I was saying, OKC is 1-1 when A.J. Mitchell plays. They lost 2 games without him. People may shake their heads, scoff at that, like the A.J. Mitchell excuse. Like, no, dude, it's a huge deal. He has been a hugely important player for OKC. More so than J-Dub this year, just like flat out.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, GOAT-level defense, GOAT-level scorer, more shooting and more supporting talent around him offensively now. Great depth. You talk about a team that can mix and match and just absolutely obliterate opposing offenses and have a damn near unsolvable offensive player of their own. It's OKC and everybody else. You can flirt with the formulas, but again, I look even at Boston and I'm like, Pritchard, Jaylen Brown, these are tough matchups for you. OKC is a team that is going to exploit a lack of ball handling anywhere on your roster. So when you get Jordan Walsh on the floor and you get Ugo Gonzalez and you get Baylor Shireman, like, those guys are going to be pressured and, frankly, I think held in check in a way against OKC that is different than it is against other defenses. Everything is different against OKC than it is against other defenses. Jayson Tatum, he can be thrown into the fucking deep end if he's having to go against OKC in a 7-game series. It's just too much for me to really think anybody has a good chance to beat them. If I had to pick somebody, I'd probably say Boston's defense plus Boston's shooting. And again, just like having 4 really good ball handlers is the best bet. Still not a good bet, in my opinion.
I definitely like San Antonio would definitely be my pick. That's why they're number 2 for me, just because of how Wemby snatches Chet's chain in those matchups and how intimidated Chet seems. Just what he does to their paint scoring in general. That's really why San Antonio is number 2. I think the greatest strength in this playoff field is OKC's defense and SGA's scoring. That's why they're number 1. The next best thing to me is what Wemby does for a team defense and how he completely transforms what the opposing offense can do on that end, and that's why they're there for me. But OKC's depth is so great. I mean, you mentioned it, all the guys that have missed time for them this year, and they just have guys who can step up. Without Holmgren and Hardenstein, they're starting big men. Jay Will can step in and drop a cool 25-piece for you. When Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is out in missing time, Cason Wallace can step up and just deliver 20-point game after 20-point game. Everybody on their team is so switchable, and they don't have to compromise any of their versatility by switching. I just think OKC is the best in the field. Like you said, man, I think they're in a tier of their own. And I would be surprised if OKC didn't hoist the title
so would I.
At the end of this season.
So would I. Like, the record is just not going to reflect how dominant this team is because they've had so many injuries. But whatever they end up finishing, I don't think they're going to lose many more games, I'll be honest. Like, they've got a tough schedule down the stretch. They're 51-15 now. I think they're going to wind up with 65 or 66 wins if they want to. I mean, they might take their foot off the gas at the end of the year, but I feel like with McCain and AJ out there, like, they damn near win every game. That's just how it is. When OKC has the key pieces in place, like, they're damn near unbeatable as a basketball team. And I just feel better about, like, the totality of this offense than I ever have before. And that's been the one thing that could get them, right, is some of these sketchy offensive stretches. So I don't want to overreact to, like, the last game they played against San Antonio and be like, oh, they figured them out. I did think that was a pretty resounding reversal of how the 3 previous games went. That makes me feel like, I don't know, are we even overstating this San Antonio versus OKC thing? Like, probably not, because they beat them 3 times and that's, like, super legit. But again, I do feel like with these key supporting offensive pieces on the floor for OKC, and just now that they've seen that matchup more times, I think Shai was a lot more comfortable this time around. I think they gave Wemby trouble. I think they defended the guards much better, contained the ball better, forced some more turnovers, just like all around took care of business last time we saw that one. And that's really what you trust OKC to do no matter what. Over the course of a 7-game series, they're just better than anybody else. So even if a matchup is tricky, even if there's something they have to figure out, they've pretty much always shown an ability to do that. And at the end of the day, just rise above and be the best team in basketball, because that's what they are. So there you go. A little bit of OKC glaze on top, just a little cherry on top, a little whipped cream on top for this episode in which they were already glazed so much. We appreciate you guys. We hope you enjoyed the basketball. It was a whole lot of fun. Oh, I also did mean to at least mention the Lakers as an honorable mention here, just because of the Luka, Reeves, LeBron factor of it all, that sort of offensive top-end talent. Now, it hasn't manifested in an elite team offense. They're just 9th in offensive rating. The defense sucks. They've, like, been significantly outscored in the Luka LeBron minutes. I think I've thoroughly covered all the reasons that I think the Lakers are not that good this year. I do just want to say, if you have them in your 9 or 10 spot, if you would rather bet on their formula than the Rockets or the Sixers, or like you had the Raptors or whatever, that's totally fine with me. It's not like they don't belong in these mediocre conversations, which is kind of what we're getting at with the very end of this list anyways. I did consider them. So that officially does it for all the basketball talk. Had to get a little Lakers talk in there, I guess. We are going to talk about NFL offseason free agency news tomorrow. We've got a historic NBA ranking coming down the pike later this week. And soon we are going to be ranking the top 30 players in the NBA, which I really cannot wait for. So stay tuned for all that in the Nerd Sesh world. Stay tuned for our video essays and video breakdowns we do on our YouTube channel. And, of course, you can listen to the show across all audio platforms or watch on YouTube. And you can follow us across social, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh to see all of our daily viral social media content. And it is viral, Logan. It is freaking viral. So, with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.